Like basically if you look at what do you call the IT companies and all, once in 3 months they'll say, chalo, we'll do a mock drill today, and once the siren is on, you will actually run to the safe point and assemble there. We are not just looking at the risk that we are vulnerable to, or the events or the disasters that we are vulnerable to, but we are looking at emerging risk also. That is a bigger step by the Indian government. Trillions of water actually happen to, like trillion tons of water happen to get displaced. 1,300 kilometer long, and a rupture, vertical displacement, the entire like trillion tons of water was displaced. A district in Tamil Nadu or Andhra Pradesh or Odisha or West Bengal, it can be vulnerable to floods also. It can be vulnerable to cyclones also, tsunami also. So like this, it can be vulnerable to heat waves also. So you need to have multi-hazard early warning system. Good morning, guys. Yeah, so we'll be continuing the question discussion from yesterday. Okay, so yeah, so I guess yesterday we had studied till 9th question or 10th question, I guess. 9th question, okay. So today we'll go into that. Some of the questions you will see like repetitive in nature, okay, because mostly what happens is, like you can see that the questions that come in disaster management is more like in the context of how India is vulnerable. Okay, so that's the reason you will actually see a certain questions repeating. Okay, so like since we had looked into those questions which are very much like for example, which are very recent ones, like since 24 we started going backwards. Okay, so you will now observe those questions which we have already studied will be repeated in the past papers. Okay, so just give me a second. Since it's a detailed document, this was done? The Bhuj earthquake and all this? Okay, this was done, no? Question number 9. So we have to do it from question 10. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, here we go with this. Yeah, so let's look at this question now. Here the question says, here the question says, discuss the recent measures initiated in disaster management by the government of India departing from the earlier reactive approach. Okay, so in this question what they are asking you specifically is, see, simple thing, because yesterday I got to know few of the students are not very much exposed to geography and environment so far. So let me little more simplify the things and let you get awareness about this subject. Okay, see, when we actually look at any disaster management, when we say disaster management, there are two things. One, hazard, the other one is disaster. Okay, so let us understand from our real life perspective. Okay, how many of you travel by metro? Okay, so all of you. So when you get into that, there are like, some security check measures. Okay, you cannot carry something like knife, or you cannot carry something like anything. Okay, but they say that is an hazardous substance. Correct? So hazardous substance ka meaning kya hai? The particular substance has the potential to cause threat. Okay, so similarly when we say any particular event to be hazardous, okay, here what does that mean? That means basically it is having a potential to cause loss of life, loss to the environment and also to the property. Is this clear? So that means nature is giving a hazard, but man is converting through his actions into a disaster. How? Like for example, like there is an earthquake in Sahara Desert. Is that clear? That is of magnitude, let us say 7 or 8. That's a high magnitude earthquake. Now, such earthquake, because of low population density and maybe not even like high-rise buildings in that region, it will not amount to such a big disaster. Correct? It will not convert into a disaster. But let us say, if I'm saying 8 magnitude in Sahara Desert, but a 6 magnitude in New Delhi can be very disastrous. Right? Because like you compare, now let us take one more comparison to understand Delhi here. Like take Japan. Okay, if you take Japan, Japan receives earthquake at least 1,000 times in a year. Is this clear? It's highly tectonic or seismically zoned region. Now that means like when there is an earthquake in Japan, okay, so they have tall rise buildings, they have densely populated cities like Tokyo and like Kyoto, all these are basically densely populated cities, Yokohama and all these places. Now, when you look at this, despite such dense population, the fatalities or the construction, or the impact on the environment or impact on the property is very negligible. Why? They have actually sophisticated technology. They can actually sort of, even if a building drops and like collapses, okay, it tumbles down, it actually tumbles down, then also there is actually very less amount of like hit on the life. Why? Because there are several steps that you will see that is taken before the activity or of the seismic event. Okay, like for example, like let us say like this. Now, when you consider the Japan city, cities of Japan, okay, what happens is even before the earthquake, there will be efficient early warning system. Okay, they'll give you warnings. That warnings will disseminate not just to the government officials but also to the public, and they are aware what to do. Like let us assume like this, hypothetically. Like for example, now we are in the class and we get an earthquake of 6 magnitude. What will you do? Tell me, what will you do? You'll save the beautiful girls in the class? Huh? Otherwise? Tell me, what will you do? Yeah, lie down on the floor. Okay, drop and hide. This is what is the major thing. Correct? So, but tell me, how many people are aware of at least this basic thing in the city? You can assume the vulnerability now, right? So, second thing, if not that also, if there is a chance, we need to use the exit, safe exits, right? That also we should be aware of. Where is the safe exit in the building? We know very well, right? So, should we use the elevators? No, we should not use the elevator. These are the basic things. So these are something like educating the public. This is public awareness. Okay, now you tell me, the group of people here in the class who are aware that they should not do this and they should do few things, the do's and don'ts, and another group of people who do not know this, who is more vulnerable? Who do not know this, correct? So assuming this, now if I say that who actually experience the earthquake, okay, after that they learn, that is reactive approach. One more better example I'll tell you. Tsunami, okay, Indian Ocean tsunami 2004. India or Indian public did not know what exactly is tsunami before 2004. Okay, accepted, right? So what happened is tsunami actually occurs in a series of waves. It's not a single wave, correct? So what happened is when the first wave hit the coast, okay, people after the wave went to the coast to see what happened, because we are curious Indians, right? So we went to the coast to understand what happened. But the nature is not like that. Nature said, why do you want to know? Experience it. One more shot. Okay. So, on a funny note I said, but that's not the case. But otherwise, we were not aware. Okay. So, like Indian National Disaster Management Act 2005, that is actually sort of guiding and keeping the things live in terms of disaster management, came in 2005. When did the tsunami happen? 2004. मतलब इससे पहले इंडियन गवर्नमेंट क्या देख रहा था? रिएक्टिव अप्रोच. पहले इवेंट होने दो, उसके बाद हम रिलीफ देता है, रेस्क्यू देता है और पैसा देता है फैमिलीज को, डिसीज फैमिलीज को. सो ऐसा था. That is reactive approach. But 2005, the entire perspective and the functioning of the disaster management shifted. It was a drastic shift to reactive approach. क्या बोलता है अभी? Like if there is tsunami, we have the tsunami bonds on the ocean. We have the INICOIS in Hyderabad, which is the nodal agency for entire Indian Ocean, not just India, for entire Indian Ocean. It will disseminate the messages. देखो अभी tsunami की alert आ रहा है and there is a chances in this many seconds or is this many minutes or this many hours it will hit this coast, that coast, that coast. समझ में आया? Okay. Now when that message is sent, can I say INECOIS will send this to all the vulnerable state governments? From the state governments it go to the local governments. Tomorrow you people will be the district magistrates over there. When you get the message, you will act firmly and promptly. Correct? Now you tell me, will it actually result in that many losses? No. Is it a disaster or a hazard now? Hazard. It's not a disaster, it's a hazard because we are well equipped to fight against it. Okay. See, any day remember this, nature is superior to humans. We cannot stop it, but we can take precautions. That is the proactive approach. Did you understand? Okay. So we'll be looking in that context here. Okay. So now little bit technicalities into it. Okay. See, firstly, like you can see, there were very disastrous events in the history of India. Okay. Like for example, the Bhuj earthquake, we studied about it yesterday. Right? So more than 20,000 lives were gone. Okay. Tsunami, more than 1 lakh people died. Around 1,71,000 people died all along the Indian Ocean coast. That was affected. In India, Tamil Nadu faced the highest crisis or highest loss. Is that clear? So, like all these happen to give a big lesson to India. Okay, where we enacted something called Indian Disaster Management, National Disaster Management Act 2005. Okay, इसका तो बहुत बार हमने देखा है previously in the previous lecture. We have seen several times about the National Disaster Management Act. I told you they have 3: National Disaster Management Authority, State Disaster Management Authority, and District Disaster Management Authority. Okay, see, Indian governance runs by 3 kings: PM, CM, and DM. PM and CM are only for 5 years, but DM is the one for lifelong. Okay, so these 3 are the chairs: National Disaster Management Authority, PM; State Disaster Management Authority, CM; and District Disaster Management Authority, DM. That's it. Okay, is this clear? So now, what exactly was the recent measures initiated in the disaster management to depart from the reactive approach to the proactive approach? Now you tell me one simple question before we go further. If we are departing from reactive approach to the proactive approach, does that mean we will not do anything in the reactive phase? Does that mean we will not do anything in the reactive phase? No. Reactive phase is about rescue, relief, research, everything, and rehabilitation, reconstruction, all these things comes there. Okay, that is like, why do we actually have to go for proactive approach? Is very simple. It is, we minimize the losses. Samajh mein aaya? We'll minimize the losses. That is the objective. Nothing more than this. Okay, so now when you look at this, so under that particular legal and institutional framework that is supporting the proactive approach are the first one, NDMA. Is this clear? Okay, so apart from that, now there is National Policy on Disaster Management. Okay, this was in 2009, National Policy on Disaster Management. Here, the Disaster Management Act happened to say that we have to build or establish a safe and disaster resilient India. That is the goal of this. Okay, disaster resilient. Yesterday we have seen disaster resilience. You remember? Disaster resilience is, what exactly is it? Yeah. Exactly. It is the capacity to withstand and cope up with the adversities. Right? So that is resilience. So this particular National Policy on Disaster Management 2009 says we will use everything that might be like government measures, that might be technological upgradation, that might be anything like expertise level, anything that comes, multi-dimensional approach to make India safe through resilient approach. Samajh mein aaya? Like for example, tsunami, you will not construct along the coastal region. High vulnerable regions, you will not construct anything, correct? So that's a better measure. And we'll go for drive, afforestation drive. That is one more measure. Okay, like this you will build the resilience. Is this clear? So next, apart from that, we have something called National Disaster Management Plan 2016. Okay, yesterday did we see that Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction? The 7 goals: reduce the global mortality, reduce the direct loss impact, and reduce the people, number of people affected by disasters. All these things we saw. right? So the same goals were put in the national level and it came up with something called as the National Disaster Management Plan 2016. समझ में आए? Is this clear? Okay. So this is something that you will look at. So National Disaster Management Plan is a holistic plan. It starts from prevention. It ends at like literally the recovery and response. Response and recovery, sorry. Okay. Matlab prevention, preparedness, mitigation, and after that search, rescue, recovery and response. Response and recovery. Is this clear? That's how it happens. Is this clear? Okay. The first thing, prevention, mitigation and preparedness. Matlab this is proactive approach. You will try your maximum to prevent a disaster. Is this clear? And second one is preparedness. You'll keep yourself, the government and the public prepared to fight the calamity. Is this clear? And mitigation, even if it impacts, the amount of losses should be reduced. Is this clear? And now post disaster events, like first you have to have the machinery, okay, you have to have the expertise, training for the people, everything, so that they can act in search, rescue and relief operations. Is this clear? Like for example, I'll tell you, earlier what used to happen is if like somebody is trapped under the debris, okay, it would be very difficult to identify them. Is that clear? Because physically we had to go and search. But now like IIT has developed a robot that is called SARP, snake, okay, in Hindi it is called SARP, right? So SARP, the robot name is SARP. What does it do? It crawls in the debris and it has infrared sensors. Our body emits heat. So this heat is trapped and it gives a message, देखो इधर body है, नहीं तो इधर मतलब body नहीं बोल सकते, इधर humans are there because they are not dead. That's when the heat is emitted. Is that clear? Okay. So like this technology and all should be ready. Is this clear? So these are something that you will see in the post disaster aspects. Is that clear? And like now when you look at this, apart from that, emphasis on prevention and mitigation, what are the steps? See, we are doing sufficient to assess the risk and map the hazards. Now for example, let us say, okay, let me ask you this. Which region amongst the two cities, I'll give you as an example, is more vulnerable to earthquakes? New Delhi or Bhopal? New Delhi or Bhopal? See, I'll tell you one thing. Himalayas is the active tectonic zone where you will find the earthquake. So the farther you go, it is lesser impacted. So Bhopal is less, correct? But New Delhi is more. So now you tell me, New Delhi or Kathmandu?
What sets AIR2 and AIR3 apart in UPSC CSE 2024? They didn't wait to feel ready. They started smart with the GS Foundation course at Vision IS Delhi. Structured learning, focused current affairs, real mentorship, test feedback that actually helps you grow. This course isn't just about study hours, it's about direction, clarity and the strategy toppers trust. Start strong. Start where toppers started.
UPSC preparation is not just about reading books or watching online lectures. It requires personal guidance, real discussions, and structured practice. This is where offline mentoring makes all the difference. Unlike online learning, where doubts often remain unresolved, offline mentoring offers direct interaction, real-time feedback, and an environment of discipline and competition. One-to-one sessions help students get tailored advice, strategy corrections, and focused improvement. Every aspirant has different strengths and weaknesses. Personal mentoring helps address them effectively. Ground discussions sharpen analytical thinking and help students develop a multi-dimensional perspective on issues crucial for prelims, mains, and interview. Elocution sessions help in personality development, clarity of thought, and confidence. essential for UPSC interviews. Test writing is the most crucial part of UPSC preparation. It helps in time management, structuring answers, and improving content quality. Offline mentoring is not just about teaching, it's about grooming future officers with the right guidance, discipline, and confidence. So if you are preparing for UPSC, make sure you have the right mentor by your side.
Correct. Got it now? So, now you will have same plan for New Delhi and Kathmandu? No, there is different. So, you need to map them. Kathmandu will be zone 5. New Delhi will be zone 4. Okay. So, I mean, I'm giving you examples beyond the national territories. Is this clear? But they fall in the same zone. Samajh mein aaya? Clear with this? Okay. The entire northeast is zone 5. Okay. There are pockets of places in Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand and Jammu and Kashmir, that is zone 5. Okay, Chandigarh, New Delhi and Haryana, Punjab, all these places are zone 4. So you have different plans for each of the city. Okay, so what you should do is you need to assess the potential risk of the place. You need to assess what are the vulnerabilities to that place, and then you develop the maps accordingly and make sure there are that maps will sufficiently help you in planning further. Samajh mein aaya? Okay, is this clear? So apart from that, now second thing, if for example the city is in zone 4 or zone 5, okay, if the city is in zone 4 or zone 5, yesterday I have told you what does zone 4, zone 5 mean, right? Zone 5 is highly vulnerable, extremely vulnerable. Okay, then zone 4 is highly vulnerable. Moderately vulnerable is zone 3. Low vulnerability is zone 2. Is this clear? Now, next, what you need to do is, like basically, we need to build disaster resilient infrastructure. You know what is disaster resilient infrastructure? Which can withstand the adversities, right? So, for example, let us say, like for example, you need to know, firstly, while mapping, you need to know which zone is vulnerable to which event of the disaster or like the hazard, right? You cannot go and say that, okay, in the flood prone areas, you cannot build a building that is resilient to earthquakes, right? And vice versa, correct? So, in like for example, you go to Chandigarh, yesterday also I gave you this example. You go to Chandigarh, the entire city has G+2, nothing more than this, correct? So, there are no tall rise buildings over there. Is that clear? So, that's an earthquake proofing or disaster resilience. Is that clear? So how do we do this? What are the steps taken by Government of India? See, firstly, at the global level, the Indian Prime Minister happened to like launch the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Okay, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. This was launched in 2019 at the lines of UN Climate Action Summit. Is that clear? Where like Prime Minister urged the global partnership to support the development of resilience infrastructure across the world. Is that clear? So, this is first one. Second one, integration of disaster risk reduction into the development. Like for example, let us say, government is constructing so many infrastructures across the country. Roads, buildings, bridges, and like, tunnels, so many. Now, you tell me, if if hypothetically, this is very much hypothetical, if for example a tunnel that is drawn from across the Himalayas, if it is not resisting the landslides, then what is the point? Correct? So you have to have mechanism to make sure even if there is heavy rainfall, even if there is earthquake, even if there is landslides, the infrastructure stands firm. Correct? Is this clear? So now the construction of a tunnel was part of a development project. So now adding resilience aspects to it is integration. Is this clear? Got it? Everyone? Am I too fast? No. Am I too fast? Okay, chalo, I'll pace it down. Okay. So basically what you can see is that resilience is to be added in the national plans, state plans, and also local and district plans. Samajh mein aaya? Okay. So that is something you need to look at. So this is what it says, integration of disaster risk reduction into the development. Clear? And further, for example, come up with building codes and regulations. Is that clear? I told you G+2 isse upar nahi jana hai. Wherever you have zone 5 and zone 4. Is that clear? And for that you also make some designs like flood resistant design, earthquake resistant designs. Okay, all these things are mandatory. For example, let us say simple example. If you go to Old Rajendra Nagar, okay, or let us say even better example I'll tell you, if you go to Patel Nagar, okay, in that region what happens is the gullies are very narrow. Correct? The gullies are very narrow. Now for example there is an earthquake. Do you really think the building can tolerate it? Not really. So the first thing that you need to do is run out of the building. Okay. So when you run out of the building, where will you assemble? The building will collapse on you. Right? So that's a disaster. So when you actually go for building codes, for example, let us take this building. You have sufficient space outside to go and stand. Correct? There is sufficient space behind also to go and stand. Even if the building rumbles down, if it tumbles down, then also you will have space to actually stand safe. Is that clear? So that you should actually incorporate in the building codes. Give sufficient space for assembly point. You go to any, for example, you go to AeroCity. Okay, in AeroCity you have multiple MNCs and the buildings and all. They have sufficient assembly point space. Correct? And there it is mentioned that this is the assembly point. Correct? So this is where you get the building codes. Okay, these regulations should be actually strictly emphasized and also enforced. Is this clear? Okay, next. The next one is ecosystem based disaster risk reduction. Always disaster risk reduction will not be just with the buildings and the roads and the bridges and flyovers. Okay, the disaster risk reduction can be even at the level of ecosystem. You have more mangroves, you have the healthy corals, they will break the wave energy. So cyclones can be actually toned down. Storm surges can be toned down. Right? Tsunami waves can be toned down. Yes or no? Correct? Because when the waves come and hit the mangroves, the energy of the waves is reduced. Now imagine one more place where we have cut down the mangroves and we have constructed a beautiful resort, okay, for coastal vacation. Now there is a tsunami wave or storm surge or some tropical cyclone. You tell me, will it withstand? It will hit the location where people are there. Correct? So that is the problem. Climate change, increased water temperature of the oceans. Now coral bleaching. Corals will be washed out completely. Ocean acidification, corals will be dissolved completely. Right? So now when the waves are coming, the depth is increased, so velocity will be greater. If the corals are there, they will break the wave. Samajh mein aaya? Okay. So this is what happens. So what you need to know is very simple, that there should be more on the natural ecosystem disaster risk reduction also integrated in it. Is that clear? Go for more of structural and non-structural measures. Okay, so where structural measures can also, structural measures will be mostly these things. Sorry, I'm really sorry about this. Yeah, you need to go for mangrove afforestation or coral ecosystem and all these things, afforestation drives and all these things along the areas. Is that clear? समझ में आया? Landslides के लिए भी यही है ना आंसर. जहां पे स्टीप स्लोप्स है उधर बहुत ज्यादा पेड़ को ग्रो करो, राइट? सो दैट विल होल्ड द सॉइल टाइट, करेक्ट? That will hold the soil tight. No soil erosion also, no landslide also. Got it? Is this clear? So like that. And apart from that, there is National Landslide Risk Mitigation Program. We have seen that yesterday. Right? So we have seen that yesterday. In that I told you, you will identify the vulnerable zones where landslides are very common, and in that zone, you will actually emphasize on structural measures and non-structural measures. What are structural measures? Like you will build some retaining walls, you'll go for contour drainage system, matlab not the straight one but like cross ones, okay, like proper channels for the drainage to pass, proper sewage management so that the debris does not block the flow of the water, right? All these are some structural measures. Okay, what about non-structural measures? Like bioengineering, go for afforestation drive. Is that clear? So something like this. Got it? Okay. Next, apart from this, these are at the level of the prevention and mitigation. What about preparedness? Preparedness. So when we come to preparedness and early warning systems, first important thing is there are 2 force of battalions. Okay. There are 2 force of battalions. You must have seen in several news. There will be some group of some trained personals from the government side who are actually searching, rescuing, providing relief and all these things, correct? So that is called a battalion. Okay, we have the National Disaster Response Force and also the State Disaster Response Force, and government has increased the number of battalions also. Is that clear? Now, when it has increased the number of battalions, now what they can do is they can place these battalions not in Delhi alone, right? For example, what happened during the Mumbai attacks? Okay, attacks were there. By the time the rescue personals or the particular NSG reached there, it was too late, right? So such situation should not happen. That's also a disaster only. That's also part of disaster management. Okay, so what you will do is you will station these battalions in all across the India, right? For example, let us say you have a battalion in Bangalore. Okay, any crisis in Mangalore or any crisis in Chennai, can these actually fly very easily than Delhi? Correct? So there is one battalion in Guwahati. Anything around the northeast they can handle. So that's how you will place the battalions across the country. Is that clear? So for that you need to increase the battalions, and that is done by the government. Is this clear? Okay, and apart from that, there is also something called integrated alert system. You need not just wait for the battalions, but there are some things that the people should proactively take themselves. Correct? So there you will see, we will actually disseminate the warning messages through SMS. Like for example, you saw recently Operation Sindoor. You were getting SMS, right? You are getting SMS, social media में आपको न्यूज आ रहा था, and TVs में आ रहा था, रेडियो में आता है, right? So there is multi-pronged approach to reach the message to the particular people, right? समझ में आ रहे हैं? Okay, maybe like the frequency of the messages or the alerts we got was relatively lesser than the ones at the borders, right? समझ में आ रहे हैं? Okay, so like that. And apart from that, it also needs to be timely communication. It's not that you will actually do it at the extreme vulnerable time, but it should be timely communication, right? समझ में आ रहे हैं? Okay, next, apart from that, always you should look at something like there should be real time monitoring that should be at place. Like I told you, the tsunami buoyants. Okay, there'll be some devices that will be put in the ocean that will be floating. Okay, that will actually measure the wave height. Is that clear? Normal waves, it is only this much. Tsunami wave, it is this much. Now it will send the alert. समझ में आया? Is this clear? Did you get this? Okay, like that. So same way, automatic rain gauges, which will actually speak about the rainfall, and humidity gauges that will actually speak about the humidity, wind velocity meters, okay, that will check the high velocity winds. Okay, all these things are important for early warning system. Is that clear? And moreover, you can see there should be regular mock drills and exercises, right? I told you about this. Like basically if you look at what do you call the IT companies and all, once in 3 months they'll say, chalo, we'll do a mock drill today, and once the siren is on, you will actually run to the safe point and assemble there. Correct? So this is something that you will see. So these are mock drills and exercises, but it should not just be towards the public, but even for the experts like the battalions. Is that clear? Okay, so, and there is also something called Apada Mitra scheme. Okay, Apada Mitra scheme. Okay, so basically what you can see is there it trains almost 1 lakh community volunteers. Okay, so it trains almost 1 lakh community volunteers, matlab the common public. Okay, where they will be ready to enact at the need of the hour. Right? Samajh mein aa raha hai? Okay, this is something that you will see. And further, emergency support system, like you have dial 100 in case of any emergency. Like the same way in case of any emergency relating to disasters, you have 112. Okay, you can call on 112 and that will be like basically the emergency support system. Okay, what they will do is they will actually leverage all the technology and all the personnel for providing the response. Is this clear? Okay, next, also the next level is technology and the knowledge. Is that clear? When we look at the technology and knowledge, now you tell me, can I say we are one of the top 5 space agencies in the world? Then why not use it? Right? I will tell you, there are certain satellites where India can actually look at even the crop color, the plant leaf color, okay, and predict the pest attacks on it or the health of the crops. Itna sophisticated technology hamare paas hai. Okay, so if that is the case, then we should use the space technology and geographical information systems. Right? So this will be helpful for imaging and also remote sensing and also hazard mapping. Okay, all these things it will be helpful. Is this clear? And further, there are certain academic institutions which is actually helping you in research and academic linkages. Okay, there is National Institute of Disaster Management. It is given the sole responsibility of training the manpower. Is that clear? It is given the sole responsibility of training the manpower. Okay, because when we say the skilled manpower, that means they should know how to react, how to respond, how to actually, what to do, what not to do at the site of disaster. Right? So these people are well trained in that. Is that clear? And similarly, you can see several Indian universities are providing graduation and post-graduation in disaster management, including IGNOU. Okay, Indira Gandhi National Open University, Delhi University, JNU, all of them are providing masters and PhD in disaster management. Okay, that ways you can increase the manpower. Okay, and further you can also see there is the new era of the artificial intelligence. Right? So integrate artificial intelligence, okay, and machine learning so that you get more inputs to handle the scenario well. Is that clear? Okay, so that is what, for example, you want to forecast the weather phenomena. You want to actually forecast some disaster that is potentially going to happen. So AI will help you. Is that clear? And because you have several stations across, like automatic rain gauges, automatic wind velocity identifiers, automatic tsunami buoyants. Okay, so all these will give you those parameters required, and that will be collated and it will actually predict. Samajh mein aa raha hai? Okay, so apart from this, international cooperation and global leadership. When you look at international cooperation and global leadership, what you can see is we have Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. We have studied about this yesterday. So it actually, India is also a signatory to it, and it actually persuades across the world, all the nations, to stand tall against the disasters. Right? To be prepared against the disasters. Okay? Samajh mein aa raha hai? Okay. And apart from that, G20 working group. Okay. there is a G20 working group on disaster risk reduction, and India had proactively taken steps to persuade the G20 group to provide funding for disaster resilient infrastructures. Is that clear? Okay, and apart from that, along the BIMSTEC, along the Indian Ocean Regional Cooperation, all these multilateral bodies, India has played a significant role in building awareness and persuading to take steps against disasters. Is that clear? समझ में आया? Okay. Next, for all these, what do we need? Paisa. Right? For all these, what do we need is paisa. So कहाँ से आएगा? So first thing, increased budget allocations. Right? You need to give sufficient budget allocation for this department. Is this clear? So, like, there is the state disaster response funds, there is national disaster response funds, where these financial resources are adequately utilized for proactive and reactive approach. Is that clear? समझ में आ रहा है? Clear with this? Okay. Yeah. Next, there is also national disaster response reserve. Apart from the state disaster response fund and national disaster response fund, there is national disaster response reserve. This will actually keep the inventories required for immediate relief. Inventories का meaning क्या है? Wherever you have an earthquake, wherever you have a tsunami, wherever you have a landslide or any disaster, there once you search and rescue them and safely rehabilitate them to the evacuation centers, then you have to provide them some facilities, medical aid, right? Food, blankets, clothing, right? For all this, you need reserves. That is actually in this. Is that clear? That is actually in this. That is National Disaster Response Reserve. Is that clear? These are the steps that you need to take to make sure you are prepared for handling the disaster, or you are prepared to minimize the effect of the disaster, or you are prepared to keep the hazard in the limits of the hazard but not change to a disaster. समझ में आया? Clear with this? Everyone? Any doubts in this? Clear? Okay. Let's go to the next question. So you can see whatever I have told you, everything is there in this particular handout here. Okay. Okay. Now, let us go to the next question now. Here we have the next question. Disaster preparedness is the first step in any disaster management process. Correct? That's what we saw now. Okay. Next, explain how hazard zonation mapping will help disaster mitigation in the case of landslides. Okay. So, we just saw a while ago like how hazard zonation mapping will happen. That was a brief understanding because that question required only that much. Okay, but now this question is specifically asking you about hazard zonation mapping, its help in handling the landslides or in tackling the landslides. Okay, so let us look at that part now. Okay, so when you look at this, see, in the disaster preparedness, not just the hazard zonation mapping, but there are several other activities that is actually helping in preparedness. Okay, but since this question is asking about hazard zonation mapping, our ultimate focus will be on that. Okay, so here hazard zonation mapping is very critical tool for disaster preparedness. Okay, where you can actually see it plays like it is, or let us say first what exactly it is. It is the process of delineating and classification of certain zones based on its degree of vulnerability. Is that clear? You'll identify each of the zone and there are several parameters. Based on the parameters, you will say this is highly vulnerable, this is moderately vulnerable, this is low vulnerability. And you will map it with different color codes. Maybe red for highly vulnerable, orange for moderately vulnerable, and yellow for low vulnerability. Is that clear? Like that. So basically here you can see in case of the landslides, Okay, in case of the landslides, the important factors that you need to look at is the slope instability, right? Because in the landslides, okay, I have told you that there are several factors that amounts to slope instability. Okay, so yesterday also I told you, but I don't know if you have watched the video or not, but I would suggest you again, there is one video in YouTube, okay, Vision IS. So that is, I have only thought that is on the Himalayas crisis. In that Himalayan crisis, tectonic risk, landslides and unplanned development. Okay, this is the title of it. You can watch that video. In that I have very much in detail, I have actually looked about the aspects of landslides also. Okay, so look into that, you will get several causes that is responsible for the landslides in the Himalayan region. Is that clear? So now here let us look at some aspects. Firstly, you need to identify the high risk zones. Is that clear? Firstly, you need to identify the high risk zones. Like, see, what is the advantage of identifying the high risk zones? When we identify the high risk zones, we'll classify that as very high hazard zone or high hazard zone, moderate hazard zone, low hazard zone or very low hazard zone. These are the 5 classifications. Is that clear? So, once we classify like this, then it becomes very easy and handy for the focus on mitigation. Is that clear? That becomes very much easy for focus on mitigation. Like basically, like for example, you will not waste your resources on the region where it is very low hazard zone, right? So you know how to distribute your resources along the along the region based on the vulnerability. Is that clear? Okay, so that is the advantage. Second one, informed land use planning and development control. See, when you have this particular landslide hazard zonation mapping, okay, using this, the city planners, the urban developers, all these people can plan their constructions accordingly. Correct? Yes or no? That will help in that. So, can I say by doing that, we are building a resilient structure? Yes? Okay, so that's where it helps them. So, apart from that, it can also be used in the mitigation application. Like for example, you can prohibit construction in very hazard zone, correct? Very highly hazard zone, you can prohibit the construction. Apart from that, you can also restrict the development in the high hazard zones. Very high hazard zone, prohibit the construction, okay? And high hazard zones, restrict the development. Is that clear? And apart from that, you can also go for safe zones. You can identify safe zones where you can populate densely, right? Samajh mein aa raha hai? Clear with this? Okay. So apart from that, guidance for infrastructure planning and design. Okay. Like for example, this will help you actually in designing the critical infrastructures. Like for example, you cannot stop constructing a hospital. Correct? Whether it is very high hazard zone, high hazard zone, moderate, low, very low, whatever it is, you cannot stop construction of a fire station. You cannot stop construction of a hospital. You cannot stop construction of any other critical infrastructure like power lines. Okay, all these things. But you can actually, by looking at the vulnerability of the region, you can actually design accordingly. Yes or no? You can design these things very much accordingly. So, like for example, like you can say, there you can establish deeper foundations of the building. Correct? You can establish deeper foundations of the building, or you can go for specialized drainage system of that region. Okay? Or you can also go for flexible structures. Right? So, all these are some of the things that can help the urban planners. Okay? And apart from that, like prioritization of structural and non-structural mitigation measures. Okay? Matlab, this is one of the things I told you, structural measures like building codes. Non-structural measures like biogeographic aspects like afforestation drives. Okay, so what you can look at is basically like when you are actually for example, you're constructing a building in a very high hazard zone. That's a critical infrastructure. But you can actually go for such structural measures around the building where it can barricade the the rock falls. Right? It can barricade the landslides, debris entering into that region. Something like this by putting some hard rock structures behind. Correct? Samajh mein aa raha hai? See, I'll give you one simple example. Like for example, if you see Kedarnath temple, okay, in Kedarnath temple, even despite such a deadly floods that happened during that time, okay, still the temple was intact. Why? One of the biggest reason, see, of course, the divine part will obviously stand. That is the bigger thing. But beyond that, what is something that has been done is they have some strong rock behind. Okay, that will actually divert whatever that comes towards this particular temple. Okay, the same thing we can adopt in our structures that we are building. Correct? So, like these are some things that you can look at. And non-structural measures, like go for contour trenching. I have told you about, like, cross trenching, where the water will go through the, will be drained through those trenches. Okay. And second thing, you can go for large scale afforestation. Okay. Large scale afforestation, because greater the amount of trees in that region, stronger it will hold the earth material. Is that clear? So, something like that also you can see. Is that clear? So, apart from that, develop an efficient, effective early warning system. Okay. Like for example, place monitoring instruments at periodic interval spaces, and that is very effective. Like for example, inclinometers, okay, which will check the incline angle. And second one, there are rain gauges, seismometers, all these things are quite important. Is that clear? So, by deploying these real-time monitoring applications or devices, that can actually give you the parameters to identify the risk beforehand and make the safe evacuations. Samajh mein aa raha hai? Clear with this? Okay? Yeah. Next, apart from that, the most important aspect, public awareness and education. Right? So, make the public aware, let them understand what is the degree of vulnerability there. Okay? And then tell them what are the potential signs of, like, the instability in that region that exists. Then tell them what exactly can happen in the event of incident, hazard or event. Okay. So, then you tell them in the case of such disasters, how do you respond? What are your do's? What are your don'ts? Samajh mein aa raha hai? Clear with this? So, this is something called public awareness and education. So, see, one of the method to do this, now, like India is going towards high literacy levels. Like you can see recently one state even went for 100% literacy. Which is the state? Mizoram. Okay. Kerala has not achieved 100% yet. Okay. Mizoram has achieved 100% literacy. Okay. That means include these things in your education. Right? Include these things in your education. So that will actually give that particular, like, brain tuning or fine tuning since the childhood. Okay. So that is something. And apart from that, all these included fine. What is the important thing? Again, comes down to paisa. Okay. Again, it comes down to money. Okay. So resource allocation for response and recovery is also important. Is that clear? मतलब event हो गया, disaster तो मतलब hazard तो हो गया. अभी क्या चाहिए हमको? हम respond करना है. We have to execute the rescue, search, relief operations. Right? So, for that you need money. You need devices. You need sophisticated machinery. All these things are required. Okay. So, that's where the government has to support with sufficient amount of funding. Is that clear? So, like also, you should be ready with the rescue equipments. It's not that like landslide हो गया उसके बाद मैं इधर से shift करूँगा. नहीं. You have to actually identify. That's what zonation mapping helps you in. You have to identify the places and keep your necessities ready. Is that clear? Keep your necessities ready. And beyond this, what you can actually look at, you also need to identify the safe evacuation routes. Like for example, let us say there is an hazard. And from this place you rescued people. Now you need to put them in safe evacuation center that is little bit distant away. You have to identify where I can place. If you actually place an evacuation center where next hazard can happen, that is not good. Right? That is increasing the vulnerability rather than mitigating it. Is that clear? That is one aspect. Second thing, for that place you should have multiple routes. Okay, only one route traveling through that, there debris falls. अभी क्या करें? एक जो भी आपने रेस्क्यू किया है इन लोग को उधर पहुंचा नहीं सकता है, दूसरा जो भी आपने उधर रखा है उनको सप्लाईज नहीं दे सकते, बोथ ऑफ देम विल बी वल्नरेबल। समझ में आ रहा है? सो यू नीड टू हैव सेफ रूट्स, मल्टीपल रूट्स। इज दिस क्लियर? ओके, एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, सो यू कैन सी दैट basically, I mean to say, basically the supplies also should be very much like in flow. It should not be stopped. Okay, there should not be dearth of supplies. Is this clear? समझ में आ रहा है? Clear with this? Like for example, let us say food material or health first aid material. This should be there in excess over there. It should not be exact proportionate or lesser. समझ में आ रहा है? So these are some things that you need to look at with respect to preparedness regarding landslides through mapping. Okay, mapping में आपको ये भी बोल सकता है, चलो this is very high risk zone, इधर से 10 किलोमीटर, इधर से 2 किलोमीटर, 10 किलोमीटर दूर तो बहुत दूर हो जाएगा, सो इधर से 2 किलोमीटर दूर नहीं तो 5 किलोमीटर रेडियस में आपको सेफ एवैक्यूएशन सेंटर रख सकता है, दैट इज अ सेफ प्लेस. सो दिस मैपिंग विल हेल्प यू विद दैट. Okay, this is the importance of the hazard zonation mapping. समझ में आया? This question asks about landslides. Replace the same thing. I have given in a generalistic mode, generalistic tone. Replace the same thing for earthquakes. Replace the same thing for tsunami, volcanoes. Volcanoes तो नहीं है इंडिया में except for barren island. Okay, or cyclones. You replace them. That will give you the answer. Is this clear? समझ में आया? Next, let's go to the next question now. Vulnerability is an essential element for defining disaster impact and its threat to people. How and in what ways can vulnerability to disasters be characterized? Okay, so they are asking what are the ways to characterize vulnerability. Okay, and discuss different types of vulnerability with reference to disasters. Okay, now you tell me, how do you understand by the term vulnerability? What do you understand by the term vulnerability? Sorry? Huh. Okay, good. And yes, somebody was answering here. Huh. Which can easily be harmed. Yes. Okay. And anyway, anything else? Huh. Okay. Fine. Anything else? Who need? Huh. Okay. Fine. Okay. Any other answers? More? More prone to disasters. Okay. So when we say here vulnerability, I would actually call it as the human dimension of a disaster. Is that clear? I would actually call it as a human dimension of a disaster risk is called vulnerability. Okay. Now, if you look at this, when we say vulnerability, how much susceptible you are, okay, as an individual, as a community, as a particular society altogether, okay, how much, or like a system as a whole, or assets as a whole, how much susceptible you are to any event of disaster. That is vulnerability. Correct? Makes sense? Yes or no? Right? So now, for example, let us say like, for example, let us say like this. Yeah, we'll go back to the same example that we studied. Along the coastal area, there are two zones. Okay, let us say this is the coastal area. There are two areas. One is this, the other one is this. Okay, now what you can see is in the second area, there are good amount of mangroves, thick vegetation of mangroves. Okay, in the first area, there is scattered amount of mangroves. Is that clear? And secondly, when you look at the first area, here there is coral reefs altogether. There is no coral reefs here. Now you got the answer, which is more vulnerable, right? First one, correct? So this will, whenever the waves come here, half energy is broken here, remaining half is broken here, and by the time it comes, it is very minimal. Now look at this. These scattered mangroves will not actually hold good for breaking the wave energy, and there are no corals. Okay, so it will impact heavily. Correct? The waves can go deeper, tsunami waves, storm surges, they can go deeper, but here it is negated. Okay, समझ में आ रहे हैं? So just remind me at the end of the class, I'll show you one video how exactly the mangroves can be effective. Is that clear? Just remind me at the end of the class, I'll show you that video. Okay, yeah. So now when you look at this, it is a multi-dimensional assessment to identify the vulnerability of a place. Because in this we took only two factors. Okay, now let us say there is one more thing I'll add to this. Now you tell me, because many of you told that this is more vulnerable, correct? Okay, now but let us say the particular like settlements in this region is placed here. Okay, in this region the settlements is placed here. Okay, can I say both are equally not vulnerable? Yes, of course, look at it, because knowing of this factor, they have actually placed the settlements here. Okay, being aware of these factors, they have allowed the settlement still here. समझ में आ रहा है? You can see how many parameters can add to assess the vulnerability, right? So it is a multi-dimensional assessment. Is this clear? Okay, so now when you look at this, vulnerability actually encompasses several aspects. It can be the physical vulnerability, social vulnerability, economic vulnerability, environmental vulnerability, or other factors that adds to it. Is that clear? So now let us understand what are those factors that like helps in multidimensional assessment of the same. Is that clear? So first thing is context specific. Okay, when we say context specific, you need to know what type of hazard is actually affecting the region. Is that clear? Like basically a community that is vulnerable to floods cannot be equally vulnerable to earthquakes, right? Like let us take Tamil Nadu coast, let us take Kerala coast, or Odisha coast, Andhra Pradesh coast, Andaman and Nicobar coast. Okay, these places, can I say it is more vulnerable to the flooding through the marine water inundations, tropical cyclones, storm surges, or like for example the tsunamis, right? So this is something that you need to look at. Or let us say not all coastal areas are very much vulnerable to tsunami. Like for example, tell me about this, which is more vulnerable, Tamil Nadu or the Karnataka? Tamil Nadu, because it is closer to the boundary, interplate boundary where earthquakes can occur. Okay, but not Karnataka. Okay, so similarly, you tell me which is more highly vulnerable for tropical cyclones, east coast or west coast? East coast, because that is where you have major amount of tropical cyclones happening. Secondly, the tropical cyclones that happens in Arabian Sea will not impact India, but it will impact the western part of that Arabian Sea, like the Arab and Iran, Iraq and Pakistan, these regions. Is that clear? समझ में आ रहा है? Clear with this? Okay, so that's why you need to know the context. You need to be very much context specific. Okay, so there you need to know the geographical location thoroughly. You need to know which type of hazard hits that geographical location. All these things are quite important. Is this clear? Okay, next. Now, when you look at this further, there is something like you need to consider the multidimensional aspect. That is, you need to know the social conditions of that region. You need to know economic conditions of that region, you need to know environmental conditions of that region, and also several other institutional dimensions. Is that clear? We will understand this as we go further. Okay, so like one factor here was the environmental conditions. Okay, second one, the institutional dimension. Right? समझ में आ रहे हैं? So like the institution has already taken the structural measures, right? And also the non-structural measures. Is that clear? So like that something. And apart from that, whenever you look at it, you have to understand one thing, that the hazards or the disasters are dynamic. Okay. So what regions today you might feel is not vulnerable can be vulnerable in next 5 years. Right? So you have to be well prepared beforehand. Is that clear? समझ में आ रहा है? So next, apart from that, so there is something called scale dependent. Like when you look at the vulnerability, you have to look at different scales. First one, let us say individual level. You should actually know the person's age. Okay, then you will know like which is the age group that is major in that region. Okay, or the disabilities. Okay, like for example, if they are specially abled or if they are old age, they cannot be like very much mobile. Okay, so you need to take precautions accordingly, right? Probably when you are preparing for the disaster, precautionary steps, place more of the vehicles and all those that can actually evacuate them. Okay, if there is a place, there is greater amount of youth, lesser number of vehicles. Okay, samajh mein aa raha hai? Clear with this? So, apart from this, you can also see there is something that you need to look at household level. Like for example, income. You have to look at the income because recovery mein wo bahut important hota hai. ठीक है? That there you have to look at the income. Second one, you have to look at the housing quality. Like for example, let us say tropical cyclones. And entire of the coastal area has very flimsy structures, matlab like slum areas mein hota hai na, like that, very flimsy structures. Then can they withstand that high speed, high velocity winds? No, right? Then you have to evacuate them earlier. Samajh mein aa raha hai? So if there is like strong buildings like this, then at least we can wait. There can be some amount of delay. So your preparedness have to know at the the household level also. Is that clear? Next, community level. Like for example, what is the social network? Social network में आप ये पता चलना है like which communities are not having access to resources, which areas are like very much downtrodden. Then act accordingly. Okay, and regional and national level, of course, economic like let us say regional and national level like this. What is the vulnerability for India versus what is the vulnerability of Pakistan? Right? If you look at Pakistan, like Tamil Nadu state GDP is greater than Pakistan. Okay, so like for example, this was in the news recently. Okay, Tamil Nadu state GDP is way more than Pakistan. So now, like Tamil Nadu can cope up better than Pakistan, right? Then imagine India. Yes or no? Right? So now the capabilities of the country also comes into picture. At what level sophistication you have to take. Okay, so next, apart from this, you have to actually look at something that is the root cause and the proximate cause. Because like when you are characterizing the vulnerability, there are several factors like the community will be susceptible for. Okay, like for example, if the community is living in the let us say flood prone area. Okay, when the community is living in a flood prone area, that is more susceptible. That's a root cause. Correct? So otherwise, like if the community has experienced sort of environmental degradation to a greater extent, that will be the root cause. You have to know the root cause also, so that when you build back better. Samajh mein aaya? When you actually build back better. When you know the root cause, you will address the root cause. Samajh mein aaya? Like for example, let us say there is a floodplain. Because of floods, the entire settlement is washed out. Is that clear? But at the right time, you could not save the property, but you saved the people at least. Now when you are actually providing them like reconstruction facilities, rehabilitation facilities, you are not doing the same mistake of building it at the same place again. Is that clear? So like that I am telling it. Is this clear? Okay, next, there are several indicators and indices that actually characterizes the vulnerability based on quantitative and qualitative factors. Okay, like for example, as I've already told you, the demographic characteristics, age, or whether they are elderly or children or adults or whatever it is, and like gender, disability, illiteracy rates, household composition, all these things comes into picture under the demographic factors. And when you look at the socio-economic factors, it will be income levels, literacy rates, employment status, healthcare conditions, access to healthcare, okay, or education levels, and also social protection, housing quality, all these things comes there. Okay, and further, if you look at infrastructure, what building materials are used? I told you, for example, the slum areas will have very flimsy structures, very weak structures. They cannot withstand tropical cyclones velocity, right, wind velocity. But if you look at the buildings, probably if the materials are made like very strong, like they are constructed through a strong material, they can withstand it. Okay, so like that. And also like access to essential services in case of any particular event, like from where to move out of it, like safe roads, access to water. Like for example, you tell me this one, the tsunami that occurred in 2004. We just look at tsunami, but tell me how many people would have starved if proper care is not taken in providing access to water and food. Because that tsunami salinized the food, crops and the agricultural fields. The same tsunami actually salinized the water resources. So now you tell me there should be alternatives also. We should not go searching then, right? That increases the vulnerability. We have to identify them beforehand. If they are not there, then we have to identify some other alternative. Correct? So this will also add to the vulnerability. Correct? Let us say in this place, okay, there, like for example, there are 3 lakes at distance. Even if these 2 are inundated, this will actually provide water. But in this place, all the 3 lakes are here. You'll have to take the same remedies for both of it? No. You'll take different remedies. Correct? Samajh mein aa raha hai? Yeah, that is the thing. And next, apart from that, you can also look at environmental aspect like land use pattern, okay, or the amount of deforestation that has occurred in that place, or like ecosystem health in that region. All these things also adds to attaining the equation towards the vulnerability factor. Is this clear? And further governance, like for example, like let us say this place has, let us say this belongs to 2 different countries. Okay, this place has effective like tsunami warning buoyants. Okay, but this does not have. Samajh mein aa raha hai? So this is lack of governance. Okay, but this is not. Is this clear? So that ways you should actually look at effective, like for example, let us say having effective early warning systems. And after having effective early warning systems, when it is disseminated, there is timely discharge of the information, dissemination of the information to the local authorities, and they acting promptly. And if they don't act, then that will be lack of governance again. Is that clear? So like this, several factors adds to vulnerability. Is this clear? Okay, next. So this is something that you look at, the how and in what ways can vulnerabilities be characterized, the characteristics of vulnerability. Samajh mein aaya? Everyone? Able to understand? Is it better simplified than yesterday? Yes or no? Okay, fine. So now let us look at the next part, the different types of vulnerability with reference to disasters. Okay, so now let me tell you this. We have the first one to know is the material or physical vulnerability. Okay, here, like for example, in the in the flood prone areas, if the buildings are not water resistant, that is vulnerability, physical vulnerability. In the earthquake areas, if you have tall rise buildings, that is physical vulnerability. Okay, in the heavy rainfall areas, if you have like old buildings, that is vulnerability, physical vulnerability. Samajh mein aaya? Okay, so like in the cyclonic areas, if you have flimsy material constructed houses, that is again vulnerability. Samajh mein aaya? So like this, you need to look at the susceptibility of the built environment. Is that clear? You need to look at the susceptibility of built environment. Is that clear? That is something you look at, physical vulnerability. Even having poor design structures. Okay, even having poor design structures or poor quality of constructions or any of lack of resilience that is amounting to, that will be considered physical vulnerability. Is this clear? Samajh mein aaya? So the second one, social vulnerability. Now for example here, what you look at is basically that how well the society can actually stand strong against the adversities. Is that clear? Like for example, if there is a particular location with huge number of elderly children, disabled individuals, women and marginalized communities or marginalized groups, then what you can see is there is limited mobility in that region. There is limited mobility, so they are highly vulnerable. Or let us say if for example there is weak community support for certain communities, then that is also vulnerability. Is that clear? Or like let us say there is huge number of people in a region which who are lacking literacy. Is that clear? Who are actually having language barriers, or who are actually having limited communication channels, then that is also increasing the vulnerability. Correct? So, like for example, there are more number of illiterate people in an area. They cannot understand even if we send a SMS. Okay, then of course that is increasing vulnerability. समझ में आ रहा है? Okay, like that. And for example, see, like you can see one simple aspect. I'll give you some example here. Can I say heat waves is very haunting issue nowadays? Right? So we are actually facing heat waves and severe heat waves. Okay. So when you look at this, like if for example, there are elderly people back at home. Okay. And if that is actually if elderly people are back at home and they are actually exhibiting something that lack of mobility. Right? And apart from that, if you look at them, if they are isolated, if they are actually isolated and they are living in a structure where the building material is not very much environment friendly in such areas of heat waves. Now you tell me, despite staying safe at home, in their own home, they are vulnerable. Right? So that word safe becomes very much hypocritical. Right? So that is what you can see. So apart from that, you can also see like I told you about that flood prone region. Okay, in the flood prone region, if for example you do not have alternative shelters, that is also making the vulnerabilities. Is that clear? So something like this you can see. Now the next one is economic vulnerability. Is that clear? Economic vulnerability, when we speak about it, is poverty. Low income households will be hard hit because, very simple thing, you will evacuate them, fine, but when you are rehabilitating them, they do not have money to recover. Is that clear? And apart from that, livelihood dependency, if it is completely on one thing, like farmers, okay, like there is severe drought and farmers' only source of livelihood is their land. Land of the farmers, agricultural lands are the first hit when there is severe drought. Now you tell me, can they cope up from it? They are highly vulnerable, right? And apart from that, if there is more of informal workers, okay, like for example, like let us say the fishermen communities, okay, or let us say the auto drivers, or let us say some daily wagers, or construction laborers, heat waves mein unka livelihood to khatam na? Yes or no? Heat waves, whenever there is severe heat waves and all, their livelihood gets impacted. Now you tell me, are they not vulnerable? Right? So that is also part of economic vulnerability. Is that clear? And apart from that, lack of access to finance. If you are in informal work sector, will they give you loans? Will the banks give you loans? No. That is another problem. Okay. So like this is something that you can look at. Like for example, let us say like this, like heat waves ki bare mein hi batata hu. Like for example, if you look at heat waves, because of the severe heat waves, the fish catch is reduced. Is that clear? The fish catch is basically reduced. What happens? The ocean water temperature also increases. Fish's ambient temperature is gone, so they will move away from the region. Correct? Firstly. Second of all, what happens is when the temperature increases, fishing nets will become so dry, it will not help the catching of fishes. So each net will cost somewhere around 20 to 30,000 rupees. Now you tell me, can the farmer keep changing it every year? No. Sorry, not farmer, fisherman. Can the fisherman change it every year? No. Now you tell me, are they not vulnerable? Yes. Okay. Because of the heat waves exclusively they are vulnerable. Now you think about this. There is an auto driver outside. Okay. The Delhi temperatures last year went up to 48. Okay. Imagine if it is 48, 50 degrees Celsius. Now, would you actually come out of the home? No. Then do you really think the person who is driving an auto rickshaw, can he actually drive at that temperatures? No. Can I say his livelihood is hit hard? Right? So that ways also it can be seen. Is this clear? So like these are certain aspects in economic vulnerability. Next, we have something called environmental vulnerability. When we say environmental vulnerability, what you can see is how much damage is caused to the environment that shall result in impacting a deadly disaster on the community over there. Is that clear? So, like I gave you an example. If, for example, you cut down all the forests, mangrove forests, and you construct a sophisticated, five-star resort over there, that is highly vulnerable. Right? So, like that. Like ecosystem degradation is one part of the environmental vulnerability. And second one is climate change impact, where sea level is rising. Okay, increased extreme events, all these amounts to the environmental vulnerability. Also, resource depletion. Like for example, over-exploitation of the groundwater increases the conditions for drought chances. Okay, and also like you can see, wherever there is extensive deforestation and where there is extensive like sort of removal of the tree cover, if it is along the slopes, the chances of landslides are more. Okay, so like this you can see several aspects that is leading to environmental vulnerability. There is one more that is called institutional or governance vulnerability. I told you, you do not have the early warning systems. You do not have the local institutions to function as fast as possible. Okay, you do not have the proper functioning. Like yesterday we saw one particular dam failure that is called Morbi disaster. Right? I told you what was the problem. The spillovers, the gates were not having sufficient capacity to actually release the water. Correct? So that was some problem. Correct? So what you had the capacity was around 5,000, what the flood was requiring was 16,000. Is that clear? So that is structural vulnerability, but there I told you one another aspect, timely release of water was not done. That is lack of governance. That is governance vulnerability. Okay. So apart from that, if there is lot of corruption, okay, if the government gives the local authorities sufficient amount of money to go for afforestation drives, but instead of going for afforestation drives, they show it on the books, yes, we have done afforestation drive, then you are vulnerable. Okay, so corruption is biggest thing. Apart from that, you can also say, if for example the participation of the local community is limited, that is also increasing the vulnerability. Okay, like for example, let us say during the blackout, okay, so Prime Minister announced that we will first have mock drills. Okay, let us say during the mock drills, people did not put efforts to actually learn what exactly it is. Okay, and if in case, hypothetical scenario, if there was some disaster, then the person would have not understood what not to do and what to do. Right? So that is something like you have to know with respect to what exactly is a governance vulnerability. Is that clear? Samajh mein aa raha hai? So these are some of the aspects. Is this clear? Understood? Okay, so this is about this question. Let's go to the next one, question 13. Are you able to understand? Everyone? You need to answer because I'm not looking at you. Yeah. Okay. Now let us look at the next question. Here, describe various measures taken. Describe various measures taken in India for disaster risk reduction before and after signing Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030. How is this framework different from Hugo Framework for Action 2005? See, first thing you need to understand, Hugo Framework for Action was actually there from 2005 to 15. From 15 to 30, it is Sendai Framework for Action. So knowing Sendai Framework for Action in case of disaster management is very important. Is that clear? Yesterday we have seen 7 global targets of Sendai Framework. Okay, so accordingly we'll look at this. See, before signing the Sendai Framework for Action, okay, what we had was, we already had Disaster Management Act 2005. I told you so many times about this. I don't think so there is a need for repeating this again. We have this NDMA, National Disaster Management Act 2005, that has established national disaster management guidelines for every particular disaster by 2010. Is that clear? Landslide, tsunami, sub disasters ke liye hai. Okay, and we have sufficient amount of authorities and the institutions that is functioning in the level, in every level. National level NDMA, state level SDMA, district level DDMA. right? We have sufficient amount of that. And along with that, we have battalions, NDRF, National Disaster Response Force, that will actually include the personnel from CRPF, CISF, ITBP, BSF. Okay, these are the people who will be there in it. Is this clear? Yeah. See, yesterday they were asking you directly regarding what are the 7 global targets of Sendai framework. That's why we looked at 7 global targets. Now they are asking here, what exactly are the steps that you need to take before, what are the steps taken before and after signing Sendai framework? Okay, so that is first question. The second question is, what was there before is Hugo framework for action. What is there after is Sendai framework for action. Now, when you look at this, okay, now how is it different between them? That is the question. Is that clear? What steps are taken in India before and after signing, and how is it different from Hugo framework action? That is it. Okay, so yeah, now when you look at this, you will actually speak about before, what were there, like 2005 only. This is 2015, no? So by 2005 we had National Disaster Management Act. Under National Disaster Management Act, we have National Disaster Management Authority, State Disaster Management Authority, District Disaster Management Authority, National Disaster Management Guidelines for different disasters, National Disaster Response Force. Okay, so along with that, I told you about the National Policy on Disaster Management, where we are looking at multi-pronged approach to build safe and resilient India. Right? Also, we have the emphasis on building several early warning systems. Since 2005, we are looking at proactive approach. So, early warning systems, capacity building, preparedness, public awareness, okay, and risk assessment mappings, hazard zonation mappings, okay, and community-based initiatives like Apada Mitra also I told you, where 1 lakh community people are trained. Okay, so these are something you will actually mention. Samajh mein aaya? See, I am going very simple about this question because each of this step we have discussed in detail, right? We have discussed in detail yesterday also, today also. Okay, next, what after signing, that is also something that the question demands. After signing the Sendai framework, like India has very much majorly aligned with the Sendai framework. Okay, I told you Sendai framework looks at both the things, pre-disaster and post-disaster. Okay, if it is asking in one of the target, you have to reduce the direct losses to the economy, you have to reduce the mortality, you have to reduce the number of people affected by the disasters. That means it is pre-disaster approach, right? So like that, it is impacting on both of the aspects. Now when you look at after signing the Sendai framework, there is National Disaster Management Plan 2016. This also we studied a while ago. NDMP, National Disaster Plan 2016, is the world's first national plan that is explicitly aligned with Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Whatever the goals of Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction is there, that is exactly given in the National Disaster Management Plan. Is this clear? Understood? Okay, so like you can see, it is a comprehensive approach or a comprehensive plan for at the national level that is looking from prevention, preparedness, mitigation, risk, rescue, recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction. Is this clear? Samajh mein aaya? Okay, so that is something you can see. Also, Indian government has never failed to look at ensuring there is a policy of build back better. Okay, when there is a disaster, the recovery and reconstruction phase is more stronger, that will establish more stronger community and more stronger ecosystem than what it was actually before. Is that clear? Okay, and further you can also see, I told you about the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, if you recall, today morning. 2019, Indian Prime Minister emphasized and persuaded a global coalition for building disaster resilient infrastructure. Is this clear? So that is something there. Apart from that, I told you integration into development planning, right? So disaster management and disaster preparedness or disaster resilience specifically to be integrated in the development planning. Okay, that is something I told you. And apart from that, adoption of advanced technology, satellite remote sensing, GIS, artificial intelligence, all these things we spoke about. Okay, and further you can see enhanced financing. I told you two times I told you in two different questions regarding allocation of increased budget, right? Increased allocation of the budget, right? So like, so apart from that, you can also see they are actually persuading the G20 countries. This is also something I mentioned, right, for extra funding. So apart from that, we have that Apada Mitra scheme, which is actually at the local and community preparedness. That is also something after 2015. So we are looking at localized and community centric approach. Okay, and further you can also see we are not just looking at the risk that we are vulnerable to, or the events or the disasters that we are vulnerable to, but we are looking at emerging risk also. That is a bigger step by the Indian government. Is that clear? So like by looking at the emerging risk, we are also taking certain steps like Amrit Dharohar scheme. Wetlands, mangroves are rejuvenated. Okay, so there are several things like this. Is that clear? Integrated watershed management to prevent landslides. Smart city missions to prevent urban flooding. Right? So like this we have, like for example, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana to actually ensure the farmers against droughts, against floods. Correct? So these are several steps that we have already taken. Is this clear? So this is something that you look around with respect to this part of the question before and after signing Sendai framework. Yes, yes, yes. Without Sendai framework, without Hugo framework for action, if you are learning disaster management, that's not complete. Okay, these two are mandatory. Okay, any particular course plan should incorporate these two. Okay, so because if you look at the number of questions, like look at like 19 questions have come in the past 10 years since 2013, and if you are looking at that 19 questions, in that more than 2 times already we have studied about Sendai framework, and this is the 3rd time, right? So if there is a course plan without this amount of importance to Sendai framework, then you have not completely learnt it. Okay, yeah. Next. So the next one, the next part of the question is what the difference between these two. Okay, for that let me show you a table. Yeah, here you have this table. Okay, in this table what you can see is basically we are actually learning the differences between the Hugo framework for action that existed between 2005 to 15 and the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction that is existing between 2015 up till 2030. Is that clear? What is the focus? Broadly, it looked at like diminishing the impact of the disasters, matlab reducing the impact of disasters. But here you can see it is looking at pre and post, both of it. Holistic disaster management. Okay, like you can see, prioritizing preventing new disaster risk, I told you about that, reducing existing ones, building resilience, and also like building back better. These are the concepts that we learned a while ago, right? Next, what is the scope of Hugo framework for action? It is focusing only pre-disaster, proactive approach, no post-disaster. But this is both. Is that clear? This is both. Okay, so by adapting towards both of it, it is actually integrating disaster risk reduction. Risk reduction matlab proactive. Okay, so risk reduction in sustainable development, climate change adaptation, resilience buildings, matlab what did we learn in a different different manner? That is integrating in the developmental policies. Yeah. Is that clear? Integrating in the developmental policies. Next. You can look at inclusivity. Here I told you Apada Mitra, community level, local authorities, district authorities basically, the state authorities, the national authorities, everyone integrated. Here all the stakeholders were not invited, but only specific stakeholders were invited. Is that clear? Okay, next. Targets and indicators. We had 5 priorities for action, but it was not very strong on it. But if you look at this, we had 7 global targets. We have 7 global targets. We have studied them, like reducing mortality, reducing direct losses to economy, reducing the what is that impact of the disaster on the people. Okay, all these things that we have studied, those are the 7 global targets. Okay, so next, apart from that, linkages with the SDGs. Here it was not much aligned with the SDG. SDG achievement target is 2030. Sendai framework achievement target is also 2030. And SDG has one particular target that speaks about the disaster management. Okay, disaster resilience. And it speaks about ecosystem. It speaks about several aspects of the sustainable development that can support it. And it is on the same lines. Is that clear? It is very much aligned with SDGs than this. Okay, next, role of governance. Here, of course, it was looking at different levels of governance. This is also looking, it is emphasizing on strengthening the disaster risk governance with all the levels specifically given the targets and responsibilities. Here, it was saying you need to strengthen, but here it is looking at different levels, their roles, responsibilities, actions to be taken, and what is to be achieved. Okay, next, apart from that, what was the focus on underlying risk? Here, it was managing only the consequences of the hazards. Okay, but here it is giving a wide address to it. Okay, like for example, it looks at the drivers of the disaster, like we saw hazard zonation mapping mein kitna drivers hai humne dekha tha, right? Context specific, okay, vulnerabilities, all these things are looked about, and it looks at poverty, like the dimensions of vulnerability we saw, all these things it will look at. Is that clear? Okay, yeah. So that is all about that particular question. Now, this is one of the interesting question. This was asked in 2017, but the event happened in 2004. So, if somebody says we are not bothered to study about something that has happened like long ago, it is more than a decade after they have asked this question. Okay, so if there are something great events or like great disasters that has happened in India, you need to be aware of them. Like Bhuj earthquake, tsunamis, 2004. These are something you need to be very well aware of. Is this clear? Okay.
UPSC CSE 2024 results are out and dreams have turned into ranks. Now you are asking, how do I get there? You've got the drive. What you need is the right guidance. Lakshya Integrated Mentoring Program 2026 by Vision IAS is your one-stop guidance program for prelims, mains, and interview. Smart, strategic revision for prelims and mains. Consistent mentorship with personalized feedback. Daily weekly schedule and practice targets. Custom test practice via Sandhan test series. Interview and personality test training. All of it structured to guide you, strategic to keep you focused, and designed to meet your evolving needs. New batch starts from 19th May. It's your turn now. Start strong with Lakshya Mentoring Program 2026. Are you still juggling newspapers, random notes, and endless PDFs trying to make sense of current affairs? Let's make your UPSC prep smarter. Introducing Digital Current Affairs Premium by Vision IAS, your all-in-one platform to read, revise, and write better every single day. Have a doubt from today's news or something in your syllabus? Just ask and get instant AI-powered answers that are concise, relevant, and completely aligned with the UPSC exam pattern. No more guesswork, no more confusion. Want to boost your mains writing skills? Practice daily with structured questions, and get expert feedback to sharpen your content, clarity, and analysis, because writing well is winning half the battle. Need better revision? Use quick notes and highlights to save key points, mark important lines, and organize your current affairs in a way that actually works for you. And here's the best part, some of the most powerful tools are absolutely free. Daily news summaries from The Hindu, Indian Express, and more, curated, filtered, and exam ready. Downloadable PDFs so your notes stay organized and accessible. Daily quizzes and MCQs to reinforce what you've learned and track your progress. A smart student dashboard to monitor your performance and stay on top of your goals. Whether you're just starting or deep into your prep, Digital Current Affairs Premium adapts to your strategy and makes every minute count. So why prepare the hard way when you can prepare the smart way? Visit www.visionis.in/current-affairs and start transforming your current affairs prep today. Because with Vision IAS, you don't just stay updated, you stay ahead.
Okay. So did you understand the previous question and the answers approach for it? Okay. Now, let us look at the next one, that is question 14. Okay. See, let me give you an heads up here. Question 14, 15, 16, 17, but 18 and 19 already we have discussed. So that is like very easy that we'll look into it. We have another 3-4 questions. That's it. Okay. Yeah. Now let us look at this. In December 2004, a tsunami brought havoc on 14 countries, including India. Discuss the factors responsible for the occurrence of the tsunami, its effects on life and the economy. In the light of guidelines of NDMA 2010, describe the mechanism for preparedness to reduce the risk of such events. Now, when you look at this, here, what you can observe is, first one, it is asking about the factors. Second one, it is asking about the effects. Third one, it is asking about the preparedness. Is that clear? These are the 3 things that you need to look at. Factors responsible, effect on life and economy, and how do we get prepared against such disasters. Okay. Now, let us look at this. This particular Indian Ocean tsunami 2004 happened especially, okay, chalo, let me give you the specifics of this. This happened on December 26th, 2004. Okay. This actually happened on December 26th, 2004, where it was local time somewhere around 7:58 in the morning. Okay. So early in the morning it happened. Okay. Somewhere around 7:58. So you can see, why did it happen? That is something you need to know. See, you have the Indo-Australian plate. Okay. And you have the Burmese plate. These 2 plates actually have an interaction near Sumatra Islands of Indonesia. Okay, there was a deadly earthquake underwater which had a magnitude of 9.1 to 9.3. Okay, so which had a Richter scale magnitude of 9.1 to 9.3. Approximately for 1,300 kilometers long along this interaction. Okay, the earthquake resulted in a rupture of the land and vertical displacement of it. Imagine, now you have a table of, like, let us say aquarium. Okay, you have an aquarium, and if it cracks, the water will leak, that's it. Okay, but if it bursts, you will see the water at the top also gets displaced. Once it is displaced and settled, it results in waves. Correct? So that was the thing that happened. Okay, you know, trillions of water actually happened to, like, trillion tons of water happened to get displaced. 1,300 kilometer long and a rupture, vertical displacement, the entire, like, trillion tons of water was displaced. Okay, when this happened, the waves that started moving, they were traveling at a speed of 900 kilometers per hour. That means jet plane ka velocity hai. Is that clear? It's a velocity of a jet plane. That velocity it went. Okay, and now when the waves came towards the shallow depth near the continental shelf, Okay, what happens is when the waves come towards the shallow depth, here what happens is the wavelength will reduce, because what happens is the trough of it will actually experience the friction. Okay, when it experiences the friction because of the land, earlier it was on the water, no friction, that's why 900 kilometers per hour. When it comes here, it will actually like sort of experience the friction. Now the velocity reduces. When the velocity reduces at the front end of the wave, the back end is coming with the same velocity, then wavelength will reduce, wave height will increase. This is called shoaling effect. Is that clear? This is basically called shoaling effect. When the wave height increases, that is a water tower. Now, itna, like this tall wave height of the water, when it actually pounds onto the land, imagine what is the impact. Okay, so that was one of the most deadliest disaster in the history of India. Okay, so how did it impact? First, massive loss of life. I told you it is not the first wave that alone killed the people. Like for example, very simple, whenever you go near the ponds or lakes, you must have had like thrown a stone into it. When you throw a stone into it, is there only one wave that comes out? No, it's ripples. This is the same thing. Okay, so this is the same thing. Okay, so one piece of advice, if you go to any coastal area, okay, if you witness abnormal retreat of the water, matlab greater amount of water is retreated, then immediately run away from that place. This is the first precaution. Okay, immediately run away from that place. Water is first pulled and then thrown back. Samajh mein aaya? Okay, so that is the thing. Massive loss of life. Approximately 11,000 people died in India. Okay, confirmed death. But 5,600 people are still missing even till today, 20 years down. 5,600 people are still missing. Okay, and apart from that, displacement, homelessness, do not ask about that. It actually runs in lakhs. 1,72,000 houses were destroyed. Okay, and around 1,12,500 people were displaced. Okay, and almost 500 children were orphaned. Okay, almost 500 children were orphaned. And you can see public health crisis, literally once the water pounded onto the land, you can see the improper sewage displacement, improper sewage disposal, and also like several, because it is a tropical area, high temperature, water stagnation, several diseases, tropical diseases, all these things were not countable. Okay, and also psychological trauma. Imagine somebody, the dear ones they have lost, then imagine the amount of psychological trauma. And experiencing such a disaster in first hand and surviving, if by chance they have survived, then imagine the trauma they will undergo. Right? Psychological trauma. All these are basically something on the life. What about economy? When you actually look at economy, in the economy you can see the fishing communities were devastated, because when that amount of volume of water is pounding onto the land, it will also throw the boats, ports and harbors, everything. Correct? It will destroy everything. So unless it is reconstructed, it is replaced back, you will not have your livelihood. Right? And apart from that, when this water hits onto the land, east coast is a fertile agricultural land. So that entire agricultural land is salinized. Okay. Then source of water, salinized. Is that clear? And apart from that, after this incident, the tourism to come back to normalcy in Andaman and Nicobar, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala took a long time. Because if the first hand experience had a psychological trauma, there is of course such a trauma on others also to go to that place. Right? So that is also there. So like economic losses, do not ask. $575 million, okay, was direct loss. Okay, and the total loss was $650 million on India alone. Okay, on India alone. So imagine what would be about Thailand, what would be about Indonesia, what would be about Burma, Myanmar. Okay, so this is there. Apart from this, when the fishing community is affected, it's not just the fishing community, but you need to know that also there is this particular aspect what is called as the ports, harbors and everything which is facilitating India's trade, right? Ennore port, Chennai port, Vishakhapatnam port, and like these are major ports. Major amount of trade happens. Now these are disrupted. Correct? Yes or no? So that is one more thing. And livelihood loss, this I have already told you already. Agricultural lands are gone, fisheries is gone, tourism is gone. So that is the thing. Okay. So what were actually the effects? What were actually the mechanism? What was the mechanism? Both of things we have actually learnt. Is this clear? Now, what about the mechanism for preparedness? Okay. See, firstly, we have early warning systems. I told you, like, we have established Indian Ocean Tsunami Early Warning System. Okay, Indian Ocean Tsunami Early Warning System provides not just the alerts to India, but entire of the Indian Ocean rim countries, including Indonesia and Australia. Is that clear? The nodal agency of this is in Hyderabad. It is called INICOIS, Indian National Center for Ocean Information Sciences. Okay, INICOIS, that is in Hyderabad. So when you look at this particular like warnings and all those things, they have devices or like that early warning devices that is placed in the ocean, mid oceans and all, that will actually detect. See, imagine that velocity of the wave was 900 kilometers per hour. When it is actually passing through this buoyant, will it not trigger the message? Yes or no? Like normal waves to itna velocity mein nahi aayega na. So that's how it works. Is that clear? We have seismometers in the ocean. Okay, we have these floating buoyants in the ocean that will trigger the message. Okay, and also we have integrated monitoring network. That means we have bottom pressure recorders. If the record is showing extreme pressure in the bottom rocks, that will be sent message. Is that clear? So like this, we have like the seismometers that will detect the earthquakes. Okay, all these things are there. Apart from this, now whenever this particular information comes to the nodal agency, we have rapid data analysis and dissemination that is facilitated by artificial intelligence also. Okay, so through that the warnings will be categorized into watch or advisory or warning. It can be categorized and sent to the local authorities and others, whoever are in the list. Everybody will get the message and then going to the other stakeholders. Is that clear? So this is how it functions. Also on the same way, like you can see 2004 ki pehle community was not aware of tsunami. They did not hear a term called tsunami unless they are into that education field. But now the community awareness and education is like increased through the public awareness campaigns. Okay, we have several public awareness campaigns like community meetings in the schools, through the media, all through this, and also community based disaster management plannings are happening. Local authorities are given that particular authority or that particular amount of powers to design their disaster management preparedness according to the local necessities, because you saw vulnerability can be of different types, right? So they have accordingly on that basis. Is that clear? And further, there are significantly periodic drills and simulations across the country, right? There is frequent drills and simulations. Is that clear? And further, you can also see in schools also they are actually practicing school safety programs, mock drills. Is that clear? So even students and children are aware of this. Okay. Apart from this, we are actually having several programs that is building resilience along the coastal areas. Like for example, coastal zone management regulation. Here, it will identify highly vulnerable zones and they will say no construction over there. Safe zones will you can construct. Vulnerable, moderately vulnerable, then you will actually regulate the construction. Okay, so like this. And tsunami resilient construction is advised. Okay, so like for example, tsunami resilient construction means like elevated structures, right? Elevated structures little far away from the coastal areas, like the tsunami resilient structures are suggested. And apart from that, there are also already identified locations where construction is not allowed because government will place the safe evacuation centers over there. Is that clear? That is also identified. That will be away and at elevated regions. Is that clear? And further you can see government is looking at bioshield. What is bioshield? Coral reef, mangrove ecosystem, all these are bioshield. So it will actually reduce the tsunami wave energy. Is that clear? It will take the first impact, front line of defense. Is that clear? And government has already given the hazard zonation mappings. Okay, like we studied, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, these and Andaman and Nicobar, these four are highly vulnerable. Okay, Karnataka, Maharashtra, moderately vulnerable. Okay, and West Bengal, Odisha, moderately vulnerable, like this. Is this clear? We have hazard zonation mapping also already in place. And further, with respect to preparedness and response planning, we already have the disaster management plans ready. Okay, where at the national level, state level, district level, local level, each of the authorities are given certain roles, what to do, and they have given certain responsibilities. They have given the channels of communication. Aapko, like if you are tomorrow the district magistrate in Tamil Nadu, okay, let us say in a district like Kadalur or Chennai or somewhere like that places, like for example that is a coastal district. Now you should know whom to communicate with. Okay, if the supplies goes out, you should know whom to communicate with. So all these things are looked upon. Okay, and they have certain standard operating procedure already defined in line. Is that clear? You should follow that. Like tomorrow when you become IAS officers, you will also follow that. Is that clear? And apart from this, evacuation plans. I told you when the safe shelter is ready, the place is ready, then evacuation plans are also ready, no? So that is also there. Okay, and stockpiling of resources. ये भी मैंने बताया था पहले. Right? You have that reserve. Okay, National Disaster Response Reserve. You have that reserve where you will stockpile medical supplies, search and rescue equipments, food supplies, blankets, clothing, everything. Is that clear? So apart from that, sufficient amount of training and capacity building at every level. Speak about NDRF, SDRF, local communities, Apta Mitra, that thing. So Apada Mitra thing. Okay, all these things. Is that clear? So these are some things. So also it emphasizes clearly on interagency coordination, parallels and verticals. State government should coordinate very well with the district. All the departments should coordinate with the district magistrate and other departments, and center should coordinate well with the states. All these are defined. Is that clear? No politics over there. Is that clear? No politics over there. That's what it means. So this is about this particular question. Any doubts? Clear with this? We'll go with the next question. Okay, yeah. You want the break? Okay, chalo, come back in 10 minutes. Okay, yeah. By 1:10 we'll continue with the next set of questions. So now let us look at the next question. Here, with reference to National Disaster Management Authority guidelines, discuss the measures to be adopted to mitigate the impact of recent incidents of cloudbursts in many places of Uttarakhand. This is a repetitive question. Okay, this is actually a repetitive question where you can actually look at this, as I told you to watch that particular video. Okay, that video can help you with major impact onto that particular topic. Okay, so now if you look at this, Uttarakhand is very much fragile ecosystem altogether. Okay, so here there is the chances of devastating landslides, flash floods and also heavy cloud bursts in this region is very frequent. Okay, especially during the monsoons. Is that clear? So now when you look at this particular intensity of this, the government of India has already come up with the guidelines. Okay, that is under the NDMA Act. Okay, so now if you look at that guidelines, it is again boiling down to the same things. See, whenever you look at any particular disaster, so far we have studied the landslides, we have studied the tsunami, we have studied the earthquakes, correct? So now when it comes to cloudburst, it is the same structure. What is the first thing? Strengthening the early warning systems. Right? So when you strengthen the early warning systems, what does that mean? You have advanced meteorological system. Okay, where you will actually identify in the real time. Okay, you will fetch the data regarding the rainfall intensity, wind velocity and cloud formation. Is it like the towering clouds? You remember yesterday we have studied about the cumulonimbus towering clouds, vertical clouds, okay, or anything like this. So we need to have meteorological department or meteorological system very much strengthened and advanced. Okay. Second thing, improved weather forecasting. When you have the devices, of course, improved weather forecasting will be there. Okay. So, like at the local level, especially, very much hyper local, let us say even not local like to a city of Uttarakhand, but within the city also the places. Is that clear? So, apart from that, you need to have effective dissemination methods where the message that you get, the early warning system should actually process it and immediately disseminate it to the respective like groups of people and the ecosystem, groups of people and the authorities to make sure they implement the preparedness and evacuation plans very well. Is that clear? And apart from that, it should also go to the community based early warning system, okay, where I told you about the Apada Mitra, right? So like that. Is this clear? And of course there is one more thing, that is land use planning and regulation. For this you need the hazard zonation mapping. You know what is the advantages of hazard zonation, we have studied this. So, and there you will implement strict building and building codes and regulations over there. You will zone the regions and apply this, and also you will control urbanization in those areas, and further you will relocate the vulnerable settlements beforehand. Is that clear? Because whatever retrofitting you do to the existing constructions, it will not help you if it is highly vulnerable. So you will completely relocate that particular settlement. Is that clear? That is also part of it. And infrastructure resilience and management, you have to opt the building code, make the particular new buildings very much resilient to the infrastructure, and any critical infrastructure and any old buildings you have to retrofit. मतलब settings करना है उसमें, इतना settings करना है that you have to make it resistant to the disasters. Okay, so that is the thing. Like you have to provide improved drainage systems so that the water does not actually lubricate the layers of the rock, resulting in landslides. Okay, and also you have to take some slope stabilization measures. Like for example, you have some debris retaining walls, or you have some afforestation drives, okay, or you have deep drainage systems and channelized drainage systems. All these things comes under slope stabilization measures. Okay, and further you have to actually sort of go for embankments around the rivers. Okay, because when there is greater amount of rainfall, then there will be greater volume of water also, so it can spill over. So you need to put embankments along the rivers. That is also important. Okay, next, apart from that, you have to focus on ecological restoration. Okay, ecological restoration and nature based solutions like afforestation and reforestation. Okay, see, one important thing that you need to remember always is afforestation or reforestation when we are doing. Okay, Uttarakhand has a specific ecosystem, Himalayan ecosystem. You need to bring the native species of trees. Okay, because native species of trees are more resilient against the disasters than anything that you get like the alien species. Is that clear? Samajh mein aaya? And apart from that, you should look at watershed management. Okay, watershed management is basically go for contour terrace trenching. Okay, contour trenching is different trenches that you make where the water can actually go down the slopes. And second thing, build some check dams so that it can control and regulate the flow of water. And also, like you can control the flow of water by like okay, let us say you can control the flow of water by afforestation, because that will reduce the soil erosion and it will increase the water percolation. So that can also be done. And apart from that, you can actually promote groundwater recharge, rainwater harvesting, ये सब कुछ कर सकते हैं. Is that clear? And apart from this, you have to actually go for capacity building and community preparedness. How? Training the public, conducting drills in frequent intervals, okay, and also public awareness campaigns, okay, like how to use the emergency kit, okay, and how to actually sort of take self-help as well as support, extend support at the towards others. Okay, and also like they have to do some mock drills and simulations also periodically. Okay, all these will help in that. And apart from this, there should be significant emphasis on the coordination and collaborations, because multi-agency coordination becomes very important. Here, like for example, the NDRF, SDRF, you know what is NDRF, right? National Disaster Response Force, State Disaster Response Force, NGOs, communities, and also like army, locals, everyone, like local authorities, everyone should work in tandem over there. If that has to happen, they should have proper coordination and collaboration with them. Okay, that is another thing. And also resource mobilization will become easier when there is good coordination. I told you, like tomorrow you are the DM and there is the, like, you know, sort of insufficient reserves of medical kits, then you should coordinate with somebody. Right? So that's where multi-coordination is important. Multi-agency coordination is important. Okay. So this is what you see with respect to this 15th question. It's just a repetitive. Only thing is, now whatever the points I told you, here it is asking about especially cloudburst. You replace it with landslides, it is the same thing. Right? You replace with tsunami, it is the same thing. You replace with earthquakes, it is the same thing. Correct? So that's where you need to actually look at the same, it is the same framework. Is that clear? It is the same framework. That's why I told you that disaster management is a low-hanging fruit. Is that clear? Disaster management is a low-hanging fruit. Any questions that come in the exam has the simple same framework. Is that clear? Samajh mein aaya? Okay. Next, let us go to the next question now. See, that is the same thing I told you. Strengthening early warning system, advanced meteorological systems, improved weather forecasting, and effective dissemination of information, community-based early warning, land use planning and regulation, hazard zonation mapping, strict building codes, and also controlled urbanization, relocation of vulnerable settlements, okay, infrastructure resilience and management, okay, so improved drainage system, slope stabilization measures, okay, river training and embankments, ecological restoration, afforestation, watershed management, protection of natural barriers, capacity building like training and drills, public awareness campaigns, community-based disaster management, drills and simulations, okay, these are the same thing, interagency coordination, okay, resource mobilization, these are the things that you need to look at. Yes. Sorry? Huh. Content is also near same, no? Instead of cloudburst, you will put what is the mechanism, accordingly you will put the other one. If it is landslides, you will write it in that tone. Okay, that's it. Okay. Yeah, now let us look at the next question. The frequency of urban floods due to high intensity rainfall has increased over the years. Discuss the reasons for urban floods. Have we done this? Yes, yesterday we have done this. Okay, highlight the mechanism of preparedness to reduce the risk. This is also something that we have done. So, can you see the same question is repeated again? Yes, okay. So, you see the framework is same, questions are also same. Is that clear? So, do we have to do this? I guess this we have done yesterday only, so we'll skip this. Okay, yeah. See, yesterday we have looked into these reasons of urban floods, increased impervious surfaces, okay, encroachment of natural water bodies, development of low-lying areas, outdated drainage systems, poor maintenance of drainage systems, okay, and disjointed networks of drainage, okay, मतलब continuous drainage system नहीं है, इधर से इधर तक आता है, फिर इधर से और एक जाएगा, so like that, so बीच में क्या हो गया, right? So like that, disjointed networks, increased rainfall intensity and frequency due to climate change, urban heat island, all these we have studied yesterday. Okay, and sea level rise, poor solid waste management, lack of integrated planning and governance, these are the causes that we have studied yesterday. Correct? Yes or no? Right? So now, mechanism for preparedness of reduced risk, to reduce the risk, abhi jo humne padha, wahi hai, dekho, real time monitoring, early warning system. Okay, and urban flood forecasting models, that is the same thing we studied as IMD, advanced technology, advanced system. Okay, next, look at this, multi-channel dissemination, same point, right? Look at this, threshold based alerts. Okay, robust drainage infrastructure management, matlab, what was the problem here? Drainage system, so uska solutions, okay? And regular desilting and maintenance, modernization and upgradation, ye sab kuch humne padha hai kal. Right? So prevent blockages and water sensitive urban planning, sponge city concept. क्या होता है? Sponge city concept is natural sponge. क्या होता है? Wetlands, lakes, okay, rivers or flood plains, all these things. So permeable pavements, rain gardens, rainwater harvesting, green roof, okay, and tree plantations, all these things will actually absorb the water. Is that clear? So this is what you are looking at. See, this is something that I told you. Natural lakes, ponds, wetlands, floodplains. Okay, and rainwater harvesting. ये सब कुछ हमने देखा है कल. Correct? All these we have seen yesterday. And floodplain zonation, that also, and community preparedness and capacity building. Same point, right? So you see public awareness campaigns, okay, community-based disaster management, okay, and also mock drills and evacuation exercises, training for the first responders. But same points, okay. Institutional and policy framework. We have integrated urban planning management plans, okay. So yeah, and also we have interagency coordination, dedicated urban flood management cells. It is all the same things. There is no difference in this, okay. And land and regulatory enforcements, okay. So these are the same things that we have in here. There is nothing much different. Is this clear? Abhi, you got your answer, right? It is all, no. What exactly is your question? You tell me. Okay, then fine. Okay, so yeah. Now let us look at this. Did we study about earthquakes? Right? Look at this question. The frequency of earthquakes appear to have increased in the Indian subcontinent. However, India's preparedness for mitigating its impact has significant gaps. Now they have changed the tone. Okay, now they are not asking how should you be prepared. They are asking what are the significant gaps. Is that clear? So here you are actually looking at that particular aspect you need to quote. That is what exactly is the significant gaps. Is this clear? So now let us look at that perspective. Yes. So now the deadly earthquake 2001 Bhuj earthquake happened to change our approach towards the disaster management. Is that clear? Especially earthquakes. So India is very vulnerable to earthquakes because 60% of India is susceptible to earthquakes. Okay. There are two zones. One is the interplate boundary, that is the Himalayan region. It has several faults. Okay. And it is an active plate, so that's the reason it is very vulnerable. The second one is intraplate, that is in the peninsular India, where you can see specifically it is along the like Maharashtra and Gujarat region. Is that clear? Latur, Bhuj, okay, all these places. So now when you look at this, here there is the continuous tectonic plate movement and also fault lines that is making very much this Himalayan region vulnerable. Okay, so like we need to bring improved monitoring over that place. Is that clear? We need to actually bring improved monitoring. Like for example, you need to have several observatories, good amount of seismometers, and periodic monitoring of the stress accumulated in the rocks. All these things needs to be done. Okay, like if you, to understand this topic further, I have told you yesterday also, watch that Himalayan crisis wala video. Usme maine like I have mentioned, there is one zone called main thrust fault. Okay, main Himalayan thrust. Okay, there that is expanding almost across the Uttarakhand, Nepal, UP, Bihar, and up to Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh. This region, despite being active tectonic zone, it has not experienced any major earthquakes since 1 century. Okay, that means it is accumulating the stress. When it releases the stress, it will be one of the deadliest disasters in the mankind. Okay, because Chandigarh, New Delhi, okay, and densely populated cities of UP, Lucknow, and also like Bihar's densely populated cities, all these are in the line. Okay, whose impact, if there is an earthquake, its impact can be seen very highly on these cities. Is that clear? That's what I'm saying. If it results in an earthquake, it will result in such a disaster that is never seen in the mankind. Okay, that is something we can observe. Okay, so for that we need improved monitoring so that we can reduce the amount of losses. We can mitigate the amount of losses. Is this clear? So now, when we look at the significant gaps in the Indian earthquake preparedness, the first thing is enforcement of the building codes and regulation. On the paper you have building codes and regulation, but how many buildings are resilient? Right? So for example, there is weak implementation of National Building Code of India, because there can be like, okay, let us say, what does that weak mean? It is weak because it is very much vulnerable to earthquakes than resistant to earthquake, than resilient to earthquake. Here, that is happening because of informal settlements, rural areas using the traditional method of constructions, which the material is not supporting the resilience. Okay, and also it can be because of rapid urbanization. Okay, all these things are amounting to it. And second thing, there is lack of compliance monitoring. मतलब इसका meaning क्या है? We have the regulations on the paper. We are telling the builders to go according to the regulation. But when it comes to whether they are following it or not, we are not actually monitoring it. The compliance is not monitored. Okay, and when it comes to compliance monitoring, there is a lot of corruption or sort of deviances that could be seen. Is that clear? And apart from that, there are several unregulated constructions also. Okay, lake bed ko encroach karo, stormwater drains ko encroach karo, or lakes ko encroach karo, or like wetlands ko encroach karo, uski upar like sand laga ke uski upar they'll build the buildings. Now tell me how strong that would be. Right? So unregulated construction is also very much. And there is vulnerability of the existing infrastructure also. Like whatever the infrastructure that is already there. Now you, like for example, hospitals, schools, government buildings, all of them, they are not actually built when the seismic code was given, but they were built long before. Okay, so what you need to do is you have to put massive expenditure on it and retrofit it. Okay, so that's a challenge. And what about informal settlements? Usko to hum kuch nahi kar sakte, right? So that is like densely populated urban slums or like informal settlements that you see where the construction is very flimsy and thin. Okay, they are not resilient. Is that clear? So apart from that, we actually have very limited warning systems, early warning systems. Like for example, we do not have a comprehensive real time early warning system, because it can tell you the rocks are actually holding the stress, but it cannot tell you when it will release. It cannot tell you when is the time, where is the place that it will release the seismicity or seismic waves. Okay, so that is another aspect. And also because of this lack of technology and lack of scientific aspects into it, we are relying more on the past events. But I told you in one of the answers that the disasters are very dynamic, right? So when the disasters are very dynamic, they are evolving with the time, then we also have to evolve. Okay, so that is one more thing. And there is low levels of awareness. If you look into that public awareness and education, there is very low levels of awareness. Okay, like not many people know that simple thing, drop, cover and hold. Matlab when there is an earthquake, you drop onto the floor, cover yourself and hold there. This is something that everybody should know, but not many people would know. Okay, and second thing, the drills are not conducted frequently. Okay, the drills, mock drills are not conducted very frequently. And another thing is the school safety drills are also not done. And school buildings are also not that resilient. Okay, and apart from that, we actually lack skilled manpower. And also we lack professional standards in the manpower that we have. Okay, so there is shortage of seismic engineers. Okay, so when there is shortage of seismic engineers, how will you construct a resilient building? Correct? A question? Of course. So also the quality control is actually not up to the mark because of this lack of skilled manpower. And apart from this, there is not much of investment done on research and data management. Okay, sufficient amount of money is also to be invested in the research and studies. Okay, that will give you a sufficient amount of understanding regarding how to build better. Is that clear? And apart from this, financial constraints, if you see, not every building is insured well. Not every person is insured. The lack of insurance penetration can be seen very widely in India. And moreover, the mitigation funds are not sufficient. Whatever the mitigation steps we saw, if we have to implement that, we need money. That is not sufficiently given. Okay. So further, there is interagency gaps also. Like if you look at the coordination and the governance aspect, there is interagency gaps also between center and state, between state and local bodies. There is interagency gaps. Okay, so coordination becomes very difficult. And further, though there are steps taken by National Disaster Management Act to promote decentralization, but still you can see the self-governing aspects of the local bodies is not that up to the mark. Okay, so that is something that you can see. So these are some of the significant gaps that you will see in this particular earthquake management. Is that clear? Okay, so that is what I have written in this also. So you can see here, continuous plate tectonics, active fault lines, improved monitoring, okay, and significant gaps. I told you, weak implementation, okay, in the level of enforcement of building codes and regulation, weak implementation, lack of compliance monitoring, unregulated construction, and vulnerability of existing infrastructure, retrofitting challenges, and informal settings, limited early warning systems, no comprehensive real-time early warning system, and over reliance on post event information. मतलब जो भी हुआ है, events हुआ है, उसके बारे में देखता है, okay, that is over, and also what happened after, that is what we are looking at, rather than like looking forward. Okay, public awareness and education, you can see low awareness levels, infrequent drills, inadequate school safety, lack of manpower, seismic engineers are missing, quality control is not there, okay, and there is insufficient investment in research, okay, and also data sharing and integration is not very common, okay, and financial constraints, you can see low insurance penetration, and funding for mitigation is very low, and also coordination gaps, interagency gaps are there, decentralization is not happened thoroughly. Okay, so these are something that you can look at. Let's go to the next question here. Yeah, so here one thing is that basically you can see the drought has been recognized as a disaster in view of its partly expenses and temporal duration and slow onset and lasting effect on various vulnerable sections, with a focus on September 2010 guidelines from the National Disaster Management Authority. Okay, discuss the mechanism for preparedness to deal with El Nino and La Nina fallouts. Again the same question, right? You can see the same question, NDMA guidelines. So you can see out of 19 questions, at least 5 to 7 questions are asking about the NDMA guidelines. And NDMA guidelines is same. NDMA guidelines is actually same. And what you have to see is only with respect to disaster, what are the specific points that you need to add. Is that clear? So let us look at this. Okay. So now, when you look at this actually, firstly, you need to know what are droughts. See, droughts are very much a situation where there is the lack of water, okay, and it is a slow onset disaster where you can see there is like, it is going to be for long duration and wide space. Is that clear? Okay, and when this happens, you can actually see it is going to impact the livelihoods for a long term. Is that clear? It is going to impact the livelihood for the long term, and that will result in mass migration also, distress migration. Is that clear? So now if you look at El Nino and La Nina, what are these two terms? You will learn about this more in geography, but I'll give you a brief understanding. Okay, there is a link between our monsoons and the temperatures of the tropical waters in the Indo-Pacific, especially Pacific. Okay, so if the tropical waters of Pacific Ocean is warmer than normal, then it will create a strong low pressure, so the winds will not come towards India. Is that clear? You know, always the winds move from high pressure to low pressure. So when the warm waters are prevalent on the tropical Pacific region, what you will see is India witnesses less amount of rainfall. When there is less rainfall, then droughts are of course seen. Okay, so there will be below average rainfall and it will actually impact the agriculture very badly, especially the kharif crops. Is that clear? And further, what is La Nina phase? La Nina phase is a situation where the tropical waters of Pacific, the temperature will be below the normal. Now below the normal matlab cold. When it is cold, it is high pressure. When it is strong high pressure, low pressure is India. You will get very good amount of rainfall here through the monsoons. Is that clear? If it is like strong El Nino, then you will have floods. Is that clear? You will have significant floods in India. So El Nino and La Nina actually happens to define whether India gets floods, normal rainfall, or the droughts. Is this clear? Okay. So when you look at the mechanism for preparedness to deal with them, the first thing is early warning system. You have to strengthen the early warning system. The same thing again. Okay, you need to focus on like IMD, where you advance the technology of the system, and you will actually monitor the climatic models, and like you have monsoon mission climate forecasting system, okay, and satellite data. Through this you can actually identify the temperature on the Pacific Ocean, tropical waters, all these things, and predict. Is that clear? And that's how even IMD does. You must have seen in the news, this year the rainfall is above the normal, and sometimes it will say this year the rainfall is going to be extremely low, below the normal. Okay, all these things are through this only. Okay, so next you need to have drought assessment models. Matlab there should be integrated meteorological, hydrological and agricultural systems where you identify which places will be drought hit strongly and what are the measures you can take. Is that clear? And further, this information should be timely disseminated to the as an advisories to all the related stakeholders so that they can take precautions accordingly. Okay, like for example, if you take Kisan SMS, okay, so every agriculture farmer can get this particular information beforehand through this. Or you can see, like for example, there is weather bulletins, media or agricultural extension services. Through all this you can disseminate to the stakeholders. Is that clear? And further, district level vulnerability profiles is also important, where you will see each district will make the vulnerability assessment and also take precautions beforehand accordingly. Is this clear? And further you can see water resource management and conservation, like wherever possible go for water harvesting, rainwater harvesting, so that you can have sufficient water in the ground. Okay, so that is something both in the rural and urban areas it becomes important, and efficient irrigation techniques is important. Go for like micro irrigation techniques like drip irrigation or like sprinkle irrigation, something like this, so that water is not wasted. Okay, and apart from that you can also look at watershed management, where you build the check dams and you can actually sort of go for contour bunding, okay, and also enhance the water retention. Go for afforestation, that can percolate more amount of water into the ground, okay, all these things. And you can also go for drinking water security, like maintaining alternate drinking water sources. Is that clear? So that is also something you should look at. And there should be something like agricultural resilience. What is agricultural resilience? Going always, like for example, let us say contingency crop plans. Like for example, if there is delayed onset of the monsoons, then you should actually recommend something like the drought resistant crops rather than water intensive crops. Okay, so promotion of drought resistant crops becomes quite important. Okay, and apart from that, you should majorly go for crop diversification rather than monoculture. Growing rice all through the 3 seasons is not right. Okay, so one should go for like crop diversification. And secondly, livestock management. उनको कितना fodder चाहिए, उनको कितना पानी चाहिए, वो alternative sources like हम ready करके रखना है, ठीक है? And crop insurance, like प्रधानमंत्री फसल बीमा योजना I told you about, that gives the crop insurance. So despite your cropping, you should actually sort of look at the insurance also. Is that clear? So penetration of insurance should be increased. And community awareness and capacity building, public awareness campaign should be done, okay, by the local authorities, NGOs, what to do and what not to do at the time of event. Okay, like drought mitigation strategies कैसा apply करना है, ये सब कुछ देखना पड़ता है. And for this you need to actually train the local authorities and also the ground level workers and increase their skills. Okay, and further also imparting skills to the communities becomes important, because community participation is very important. Because I told you in the gaps, if the community doesn't participate, then the vulnerability increases. Is that clear? Community participation is also important. And institutional and financial mechanisms also we need to look at. There the government has put some drought management centers where it will at the ground level monitor and manage the droughts. Is that clear? And further you can see interagency coordination as usual. Okay, and financial allocation is also important. Is that clear? Financial allocation is also very important for the ground level functioning effectively. Okay, and further, like you can see, there are certain declaration protocols which is to be followed across the states and the local bodies. Matlab standard operating procedures. Okay, that is to be adhered to. Okay, so these are some of the important steps that need to be taken. Is this clear? Okay, these are very simple topic, simple aspects that you need to take. Huh. Huh. Yes. Huh.
So in case we already say that the farmer to do this,
Huh.
do that, then our prediction on that would.
Okay. See, that is what is a gap in, like, earthquakes also. Okay, because we do not have very strong precursors. Okay, like for example, earthquakes are also at times predicted based on the animal behavior. Okay, now based on that you cannot evacuate the entire community. Okay, that gives a false trust on the government. Okay, so like strengthening the early warning system is where necessity, because we are not looking at single parameter. Okay, we are using artificial intelligence, we are using supercomputers like Pratyush and Mihir, where these are employed in the IMDs. Okay, where Indian Meteorological Department utilizes these supercomputers to actually simulate that situation and see what is the degree based on the parameters they get from the sensors, and then they implement it.
Actually, I observed last time many times the government said in Google it's mentioned that the climate will be not good today, and it will happen rainfall high. But when we observe that that day we are not going college, we are school because of that. But it's not happening. It's many times.
No, see, that's what I'm saying. Like based on the different parameters, they will actually simulate and they will give the warning. In that also there is levels of it. Okay, yellow and orange and red, like this you have levels of it. Okay, when they give yellow warning, like that means that you should be aware of the situation that it might rain. If it is rain, then they will only say the schools to close down because it is heavy rainfall. Like for example in Bangalore, it's been raining almost since a week. Okay, heavy rainfall. Okay, so what you can see is basically today also there is an heavy rainfall forecast from 3 p.m. Okay, that is given by IMD only. That is based on the parameters like how much is the humidity in the atmosphere. Okay, so there is a concept called relative humidity. If it is like 90% or near the saturation or something, then they'll give the alerts like that. Okay, so being prepared is any day good, rather than like sort of like being unprepared. Correct? So that is the early warning systems. Okay, yeah. Any other doubts? Anyone? Okay, chalo, let's look at the last question now. Okay. How important is vulnerability and risk assessment for pre-disaster management? As an administrator, what are the key areas that you would focus on in disaster management system? This was the first question in disaster management that the UPSC asked. Is that clear? So now you know what is vulnerability, right? You know already what is risk assessment, correct? So let's give a try. I'll give you 10 minutes, try to write the answer for this. Then we'll discuss, right? Please write. The question is here on the board, so don't look at the answer, but try to write, okay? Done, everyone? At least are you able to write half the answer? I mean, majority of you. At least half the answer you are able to write. So that is because like what we have studied, again the same thing is asked. Here, how important is vulnerability and risk assessment for pre-disaster management? We have studied the characters of vulnerability, types of vulnerability, so you can write this part of the answer. Secondly, as an administrator, what are the key areas that you would focus in disaster management? Right? So basically, why is it important? When we look at why is it important, the first part of the question, it gets easier for you to make informed decision making. Right? Like for example, how much resources to be allocated for which district? That gets easier. Okay. Or like infrastructure development kaisa karna hai? Urban planners we spoke about. That becomes easier. Or like for example, policy formulation gets easier. Local level policy formulation becomes easier. And also targeted mitigation will be there. Okay. Where exactly the population is greatly vulnerable, their efforts can be taken more. Okay, so targeted mitigation can be done. Apart from that, effective preparedness, right? So like for example, they can actually look for the design of the early warning systems, or like for example evacuation plans, okay, or evacuation safe routes, okay, all these things can be taken. Apart from that, resource optimization. With the limited amount of resource, how effectively you can actually execute the plan, that becomes easier. And enhanced resilience. Okay, so when you know the root causes of vulnerability, like I told you, floodplains is the reason for flooding, or like deforestation is the reason for landslides. When you know that, that shows you the vulnerability, then you can act accordingly. Correct? And apart from that, public awareness and education. What is the level of awareness and what is the degree of vulnerability? So how much you should increase the efforts to increase the public awareness. Okay, so these things can be done. And also compliance with the international frameworks. Okay, by understanding the vulnerability of a place or risk assessment of a place, we can actually take our steps very much compliant with the international standards like Sendai framework. Is that clear? So these are some of the important aspects. Apart from this, you can look at the key areas as an administrator you need to focus on. Is that clear? Like for example, detailed mapping, hazard zonation mapping and analysis of it. Okay, we have studied that part thoroughly. So what is the advantage of doing that? You know very well. As an administrator, you should go for, if you are a district administrator, within the district you go for detailed hyper local mapping. Is that clear? Hazard zonation mapping. So apart, like for example, you can have different things also, like landslides, seismic zone, floods, all these like different maps can be done. And apart from that, you can also see that what is the impact of the changing climate, उसकी बारे में भी आप steps ले सकते हैं. And data integration and accessibility, like for example, whatever the data that you accumulate, that data can be integrated well and analyzed well, and also you can have greater accessibility when it is within your district. So it's better that you gather the data at the district level. And apart from this, you have to strengthen the disaster risk governance. How would you do that? By assigning clear roles and responsibilities for every authority and every stakeholder. Okay, and bringing good amount of interagency coordination and collaboration. We have studied this part also, right? And also you have to mainstream the disaster risk reduction techniques. Okay, like for example, it can be urban planning, infrastructure development of resilient manner, and also like improving the health and education conditions, all these things, awareness, all these things. Okay, and further if you see, you need to have multi-hazard and multi-agency early warning systems in your districts. Okay, matlab, and particular district, like for example, a district in Tamil Nadu or Andhra Pradesh or Odisha or West Bengal, it can be vulnerable to floods also, it can be vulnerable to cyclones also, tsunami also. So like this, it can be vulnerable to heat waves also. So you need to have multi-hazard early warning system. Is that clear? And moreover, that information that you actually gather, collate, analyze, that information should reach to the last mile. Matlab, it should be disseminated not just to the local authorities there, but also to the last mile. Matlab, individuals. How do you do that? SMS, media, social media, or like any other radio or any other channels. Is that clear? Based on the need, you should align it. Is that clear? Next, apart from this, you should also make sure that there is appropriate, culturally sensitive, like steps taken in the terms of the preparations or preparedness. Is that clear? Like for example, like let us say if we have that map over there, okay, on the wall, that shows your way to the safe exit, fire exit. Okay, now if I put it in Hindi, okay, do you think the entire class knows Hindi? Not really, right? If you put it in English, do you think the entire class would be able to read English? Yes. Okay, now for example, let us say we are putting such thing on the metro station. If I put it in English or Hindi, do you think entire crowd will be able to see and understand it? No. That's why what you have is an infographic, right? So you have to be in such a position to disseminate the information in the comprehensible manner. Is that clear? Samajh mein aa raha hai? So that is also, it should not be a language barrier. that ways. Okay. Next, apart from that, resilient infrastructure should be brought in. Wherever the existing infrastructure is there you bring retrofitting. Wherever new buildings are coming, you bring the building codes for resilience. Is that clear? And moreover, green infrastructure is to be promoted. Like more of restoring the mangroves, wetlands or floodplains, or like, promoting afforestation, riparian buffers. All these things are quite important. Okay. Further, like you should go for smart and sustainable urban planning, like smart city mission, where we are looking at. So we need to go for smart and urban planning, smart and sustainable urban planning, like the stormwater drains, periodic maintenance, or like uska expansion of the capacity of it. Okay, proper road widening and control of infrastructure in the moderate vulnerable zones, and restricting the infrastructure in the high vulnerable zones. All these comes as a part. Okay. Further, like you need to actually go for like capacity building and community empowerment. How? Training, mock drills, or like public awareness campaigns, or like even psychological support. Is that clear? Even psychosocial support is very important. Is that clear? So psychosocial support is very important, because that's how through the mock drills and all these things you make the public aware that you know something to fight against, or be resistant against some disaster. Is that clear? So that is also very much important. Is that clear? Like for example, very simple, like the mock drill that was actually announced like during this Operation Sindoor was actually a psychosocial support, right? That's the reason, despite itna blackouts along the western part, northwestern part, right, still people were very safe and they were confident, they were staying back at their homes, right? They did not act, there was no like distress migration or something. That was psychosocial support. Is that clear? That's something. And also very important aspect is financial preparedness. Okay, so there should be dedicated disaster funds. Like you have the NDRF and SDRF, there should be some dedicated fund that is to be present at the district level also. That is your responsibility as a district magistrate to manage it. Is that clear? And further, you should also make sure the insurance and the social protection penetrates deeper into the society. Okay, you should persuade people to take insurance. Is that clear? All these are some of the aspects that you need to do as an administrator. Is this clear? So these are all the questions that you need to know from the last 10 years. So this is about the discussion about disaster management. Okay, so if you have any doubts, I am here, you can ask me. Let's conclude the session. Okay, I hope you had a good learning from the session. Okay, yeah, thank you.